Chapter 310. How ironic. In the past, whenever Yun-na saw him, she would look at him with cold disdain and call him a little b** starred. Now, she was kneeling beside him, kowtowing and begging for mercy. Li Hanlin, who was behind him, bent over and flung her hand away from his shoulder. Li Qin, too, crawled to Yun Tianyo's feet on all fours. Tears streamed down her face as she kowtowed and admitted her mistake. You don't really want to kill us, do you? At least, for the sake of your grandfather, please let us live. You're hiring a hitman. It's illegal and unacceptable. Hiring a hitman? Yun Tianyo muttered to himself nonchalantly and smiled slyly. Did anyone hear that? There was dead silence in the room. Who would believe a 6-year-old child's words? A 6-year-old child hiring a hitman to kill someone was simply a fantasy. In the suffocating silence, Yun-na kowtowed heavily on the floor and said hoarsely, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong." She wailed heartbreakingly as she reached out to hug Yun Tianyo. Yun Tianyo did not even look at her and coldly waved her hand away. "Don't touch me, it's dirty. Woo, you." Yun-na's teary eyes were filled with despair and sorrow. Unforgivable, unforgivable. Yun Tianyo's shoulders trembled slightly. He turned around and coldly said, "Li Qin, 6 years ago, you caused my mommy to become a single mother at the age of 18. She sacrificed herself for the Yun family, but how did you treat her?" Abruptly, he enunciated each word clearly. "Li Qin, I've long wanted to get rid of you." Yun-na sobbed and begged, "Give us another chance." Yun Tianyo said, "It's not that I didn't give you a chance, you didn't cherish it." Li Qin was stunned. "I became so strong in order to protect my mommy. You hurt my mommy again and again, yet you want me to forgive you. Impossible." With that, he turned and walked out of the ward. Li Dongxiang's men soon arrived. Li Qin cried behind him, "You can't be that cruel, right?" Yun Tianyo ignored her and quickly left the ward. Behind him were Li Qin and Yun-na's despairing faces. Back in the ward, he closed the door behind him. Yun Tianyo stood at the doorway, looking cold and ruthless. When Li Hanlin saw this, his heart ached and he hugged him tightly. Her weak body seemed to be unable to withstand a single blow. Although he wasn't his child, after a year of master-servant relationship, he had already treated him as half a family member. After witnessing his ruthless means in the business world, he was in awe of this child from the bottom of his heart. However, in front of Yun Shishir, he looked innocent and cute. When he looked at Yun Shishir, his eyes were pure and untainted. This purity was without any pretense, as if this was how he should be. However, hatred had dyed this purity black. He originally thought that it was because of his superb acting skills that he was able to switch between the front and the back. But now, it seemed that he no longer thought so. What kind of childhood did this child have that he could do such a cruel thing? To a child, it was especially cruel. He did not know how dark his childhood was to be able to gnash his teeth in hatred to kill someone. Chapter 311. At the Mu residence. Mu Yaja parked his car in the garage and walked into the living room. Both Mu Sheng and Mu Wanru were there. Grandpa Mu sat in the armchair with a solemn expression. Mu Wanru, who was kneeling beside him, was carefully massaging his legs and massaging them from time to time. Grandpa Mu's face turned ashen when he saw Mu Yaja. He snorted coldly. "You finally know how to come home." "Grandpa." Mu Yaja greeted him. Mu Wanru looked at him. She opened her mouth a few times but did not say anything. Grandpa Mu slammed the table. He was obviously furious. "Where have you been for the past 2 days? You still know about this house?" "I was busy." "Busy? What were you busy with?" "You were busy with a woman's bed." Grandpa Mu was furious. Mu Wanru immediately patted his chest that was heaving up and down due to his anger. She said gently, "Grandpa, don't be angry. Don't hurt your body. He must be busy with the company's affairs." "That's what?" "He's busy. Wanru, you're always thinking of him, but has he ever thought of you?" Mu Wanru's face stiffened. Her eyes were filled with grievance. The atmosphere in the living room was extremely tense. It was as if a storm was brewing. Mu Yaja sat on the sofa and brewed a cup of tea. He looked calm as if he did not care about Grandpa Mu's anger. Grandpa Mu was furious when he saw Mu Siju's nonchalant attitude. Who did you give the bungalow at Shanti Walk to? Grandpa Mu narrowed his eyes. His face was gloomy. Mu Yaja furrowed his brows. It was obvious that his every move in the past few days was being monitored. Grandpa Mu soon heard about what he had done 15 minutes ago. This realization made him somewhat displeased. Hence, he remained silent in the face of Grandpa Mu's interrogation. Not talking? Seeing that Mu Yaja was silent, he sat up straight and threw a file in front of Mu Yaja. He asked coldly, "At least explain this matter clearly." Mu Yaja expressionlessly took out a stack of documents and a few photos from the folder and glanced at them coldly. Sure enough, Grandpa Mu had sent someone to investigate Yun Tianyu. Mu Wanru also walked over curiously and picked up the photos. Her expression froze and her heart sank. She did not know that he was investigating Yun Tianyu. He had no idea. Mu Wanru secretly gritted her teeth. The situation did not develop as she had expected. If Mu Sheng were to investigate Yun Tianyu, he would definitely find out about Yun Shishir. At that time, if they found out about the incident from more than 10 years ago, Mu Wanru's heart was suddenly in her throat and her breathing stopped. Mu Sheng was in a fit of anger, so he did not notice her abnormality. He only asked coldly, "Have you investigated this child's matter clearly?" Mu Yaja's deep gaze fell on Mu Wanru, who was unsettled, and he slowly answered, "No. I think this child is about 6 or 7 years old. When did this happen?" He angrily said, "I don't care how this child came about. Anyway, the Mu family's bloodline can't be outside. Bring him back." Mu Wanru returned to her senses and quickly said, "Grandpa, let's put this matter aside for now. We haven't investigated the matter clearly. Isn't it too hasty to make such a decision?" Chapter 312. Mu Wanru's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. Mu Yaja remained silent. Seeing that, Grandpa Mu bellowed, "Give me an explanation for this matter as soon as possible." "You summon me back just for this matter?" Mu Yaja frowned. It was not that he had never thought of letting Yu return to the Mu family. However, now was not the time. He already had solid evidence in his hands, but he was still a little short of it. "Of course not." Grandpa Mu calmed his anger and said in a low voice, "Arrange your marriage with Wanru as soon as possible." Mu Wanru's face lit up with joy when she heard that. She pretended to be shy and asked, "Grandpa, why so sudden marriage?" Mu Yaja's eyes twitched dangerously. "But if you don't arrange it as soon as possible, how long do you want to delay it? She's your fiancée and your childhood sweetheart. Now that both of you are of age, your marriage naturally can't be delayed any longer. Otherwise, I won't feel at ease even if it's delayed for a moment." Grandpa Mu slammed his walking stick on the floor as he yelled in annoyance. Mu Wanru's heart skipped a beat when she saw Mu Yaja's cold face. She hugged Grandpa Mu's shoulders aggrievedly and said, "Grandpa, we're not ready yet. What do you need to prepare for a marriage? Both of you are already engaged. It's inevitable that the public will be suspicious of you if you delay the wedding. Besides, Wanru, it's not that I want to nag at you. Even if Yaja doesn't care, you should do more. Are you willing to watch your man be seduced by another woman?" Grandpa Mu sized up Mu Yaja as he said that. His voice instantly turned gloomy. "Wanru has been with you for so many years. I won't allow you to let her down. Arrange the marriage as soon as possible, understand?" Mu Yaja remained silent for a while. Suddenly, his lips curled into a deep smile. "I understand, Grandpa. That's good." His answer was like a tranquilizer. Grandpa Mu was finally relieved. Mu Wanru, who was standing at the side, was also overjoyed. She thought that Mu Yaja would try his best to reject the marriage, but he actually agreed to it. "Wanru, both of you must be well." Grandpa Mu was overjoyed as he patted the back of her hand gently with a kind look on his face. She reservedly replied, "Thank you, Grandpa. Grandpa, I'm tired. I'm going back to my room first." Mu Yaja expressionlessly said that and went upstairs. Grandpa Mu immediately signaled to Mu Wanru with his eyes, and the latter immediately understood. Lifting her skirt, she followed Mu Yaja into the bedroom. Once they were he, Unrao and Wanru. And Wanru saw this. Mu's when when. Then she immediately went forward to help him change his clothes. The man glanced at her from the corner of his eye. His expression was distant as he dodged her actions. Mu Wanru froze on the spot as if she had been petrified. His indifference caused her to be at a loss of what to do. She felt uneasy. After pondering for a while, she finally mustered her courage to speak. You seem to be so cold to me recently. But am I? Mu Yaja did not look at her. His eyes were fixed on the floor-to-ceiling window. He casually pulled his collar and took off his shirt. His tone was cold. Mu Wanru's heart tightened. She felt wronged. Of course, you're always cold to me. But haven't I always been like this? His leisurely attitude made her feel even more embarrassed. However, she had no other choice. She could not choose to retreat. There was no way out for her. Chapter 3:13. Grandpa Mu was whispering in her ear. If the man was not proactive enough as a woman, she should let go of her modesty. She was proud of her modesty. She used to be so reserved too. However, Mu Yaja was like a proud and free wind, unpredictable. She did not even know how to talk to him to attract his attention. He had been extremely cold to her since they were young. On one hand, it should be his resistance to this marriage. On the other hand, maybe he was not interested in her at all? Mu Wanru clenched her fists and slowly took a step forward. Why don't you touch me? Mu Yaja opened his eyes slightly. His gaze was cold, but he did not say a word. She watched as the man casually pulled off his tie and took off his shirt. His elegant and calm expression made it seem as if she didn't exist. Mu Wanru's face was full of embarrassment. Seeing that he was about to enter the bathroom, she immediately took a step forward nervously and forced a smile. Is it because I'm not attractive to you? Or is it because I'm not proactive enough? She paused and hurriedly said, I can take the initiative as long as you like it. Mu Yaja turned his face away impatiently. Bang. What responded to her was the sound of the bathroom door closing. The door was locked. Mu Wanru's legs went soft and she collapsed on the ground as if she had collapsed. She rubbed her hair in annoyance and felt wronged. She wanted to cry, but no tears came out. This man had always been so cold. It was the same for everyone. When they were young, Mu Yaja was not close to her. At first, to her who had just stepped into the Mu family, this young man exuded a heart-palpitating coldness and always avoided anyone who wanted to get close to him. She had no choice but to accept this. For so long, Mu Yaja had never had a woman by his side, which made her feel more at ease. But why did he have to treat that Yunshirshir? What was so good about that Yunshirshir? Why did this man who had always been cold take her to heart? Thinking of this, Mu Wanru's heart was filled with resentment. No, he had to act quickly. That Alan was incompetent. She had to find another way to get rid of Yunshirshir as soon as possible. Voila! The bathroom door opened. Mu Yaja walked out of the bathroom in a brocade bathrobe. His tall figure and slightly open collar revealed his sexy and well-defined muscles. She looked even more graceful and luxurious. His slightly damp hair was slightly messy, but it didn't diminish his handsomeness at all. Instead, it made him even more handsome and charming. Seeing that she was still there, Mu Yaja's eyes flashed with disgust. Why haven't you left? Mu Wanru said cautiously, Grandpa asked me to sleep in your room tonight. Sleep with me? The man asked coldly. He lit a cigarette and took a deep puff. He rarely smoked, unless it was an important social event or when he was extremely frustrated, then he would light up a cigarette. It could be seen that he was not in a good mood tonight. Mu Wanru stubbornly did not move an inch. I know you might not be ready, and I don't want to be so fast. But Grandpa's health is not good, so I can only follow his wishes. He instructed me to do this. I don't want to anger him, I'm afraid he'll hurt his body. Mu Yaja narrowed his handsome eyes and looked at her. She actually came up with such a dignified reason, ridiculous. You want me okay? Chapter 3:14. Mu Wanru's face was full of shyness. She gently unbuttoned her dress and slowly approached him. As she walked step by step, her long dress fell off her body and fell to the ground. Her fair and smooth body was completely exposed to the cold air. Mu Yaja's pupils constricted. A hint of suppressed anger flashed in the depths of his handsome eyes. Tonight I'll give myself to you. You want me, okay? The woman walked in front of him. A pair of arms slowly wrapped around the man's sturdy waist. Her delicate lips softly pressed against his chest. She was trying to melt his cold heart with her tenderness. When she was looking forward to the man's next move, the man's cold voice came from the top of her head. Put it on. What? She was shocked. She raised her head in surprise but looked into a pair of deep eyes. Put it on and get lost. His voice was as cold as ice colliding. Before Mu Wanru could react, Mu Yaja fiercely pinched her chin and said with a face full of disgust, "Even if you want to, you have to see if I'm interested in you. I advise you, don't try your best to show off your charm. Don't you think you're very cheap?" "Cheap?" he asked back. "What? Isn't it? Don't you think you're disgusting?" Mu Yaja pushed her away heavily. "If you want to seduce me, please show me some real ability. Otherwise, it will only make me more disgusted." Mu Wanru was pushed to the ground. She was in so much pain that she frowned. Embarrassed, humiliated, and broken down, she cried with red eyes, "What kind of woman do you like? I can change for you. Do you like Yun Shirshir? Pure and innocent? If you were half of her, you wouldn't be so disgusting." Mu Wanru was stunned. Tears flowed freely from her eyes. The man didn't even look at her. He only felt disgusted. He hooked her with his toes and covered her body with her clothes. "Get lost." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, followed by Xiao Yichen's childish voice. "Daddy, can I come in?" The door wasn't locked, so Xiao Yichen tiptoed and pushed the door open. However, as soon as he opened the door, he was greeted with an unbearable scene. He saw Mu Wanru lying on the ground, completely naked, with only a dress barely covering her body. At the side, Mu Yaja stood coldly at the side, his face as dark as ink. "Daddy." Xiao Yichen was shocked. His face turned red and he quickly turned around. "I'm sorry, come here." Seeing the little fellow, Mu Yaja bent over slightly and called out. Xiao Yichen blushed. He had never seen a naked woman before. Since he was young, he had been taught the etiquette of a gentleman. Therefore it was a taboo. When he heard his daddy's call, he covered his eyes and ran into Mu Yaja's arms. Mu Yaja hugged him and covered his eyes with his large palm. He turned his head and glared coldly at Mu Wanru, telling her to get lost. Mu Wanru hurriedly put on her clothes. Embarrassed and angry, she ran away. The door closed again, and silence returned. Xiao Yichen pushed his wide palm away and asked curiously, "Daddy, why isn't Mommy wearing any clothes?" "She's hot," Mu Yaja said calmly. "It's raining outside. It's very cold." Xiao Yichen mumbled. The scene just now was too impactful. His heart still hadn't calmed down. "Have you finished your homework?" "I finished it a long time ago." Xiao Yichen smiled and hugged his neck. "I'll sleep with Daddy tonight, okay?" Chapter 315. By the time Yun Shirshir rushed to the hospital, it was already late at night. Perhaps it was because she had not slept a wink the entire night that she fell asleep on the sofa while she was packing her clothes. In the end, a call from her manager woke her up. "Remember to come to Huanyu to sign the contract next Monday." "Shirshir, congratulations on signing a contract with Huanyu Entertainment. This is a very smooth first step." He called to inform her not to miss the signing ceremony with Huanyu next Monday. She hung up the call and looked out of the window. It was already drizzling. She could not help feeling a little dazed. She had actually entered the entertainment industry. Would her career progress be smooth in the future? She rushed to the hospital and hurriedly pushed open the ward door. Yun Shirshir was also a little surprised by the luxurious VIP ward. In the living room, Yi was sitting in Yun Yecheng's arms, flipping through the comic the latter had bought in boredom. Only the heavens knew how bored he was to be flipping through the comic books that he usually disdained. When he saw Yun Shirshir, he immediately pounced into her arms barefooted. "Mommy, you're finally here." I thought you were going to leave Yu alone in the hospital again. How could that be? Yun Shirshir reached out and gently patted Yu's head. She only calmed down when she saw that his complexion had regained some color. She smiled slightly and asked, Yu, have you eaten? Yes, I have. If I wait for my stupid mommy to send food over, you will be so hungry that smoke will come out of my 7 orifices. Yun Tianyu pouted in dissatisfaction. His tone was full of grievance and resentment. Yun Shirshir did not know whether to laugh or cry. You even learned an idiom? Did the principal teach you that? Cough. It's Yu's mommy who taught me well, Li Hanlin said awkwardly at the side. Yu coolly said, my mommy never cares about my homework, nor does she sign me up for any interest classes. Basically, Yun Shirshir was not willing to impose any heavy learning on the child. She believed that childhood should be enjoyed. Yun Yecheng dialed Li Qin's number, but the call did not get through. He had gone to Yun Na's ward earlier, but she had already left. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't contact the two of them. It was as if he had disappeared from the face of the earth. Although he had doubts in his heart, he didn't care about it anymore. Late at night, a van sped along the highway. In the pitch-black carriage, Yun Na slowly woke up. At the instant she opened her eyes, the intense pain that came from her body stimulated her nerves, and she recalled exactly what had happened. After being taken away from the hospital, Li Dongqiang tied her and Li Qin up and threw them into a van. She struggled fiercely, crying and begging for mercy in a heart-wrenching manner. An enormous fear shrouded her heart. She didn't dare imagine that she would fall to such a state. What's going on? What's going on? How could Yun Tenyu be so capable? He was only 6 years old. How could he be so heaven-defying? She seemed to remember that the man in the suit respectfully called him President Yun? President Yun? At such a young age? She had yet to figure out the ins and outs of the situation. Li Dongqiang saw that she was crying and throwing a tantrum, so he knocked her out with a knife. Yun Na only remembered that her vision turned black, and then she fainted and lost consciousness. When she woke up, she was in an enclosed space with no ventilation. It was stuffy and hot. She opened her mouth to call for help, only to realize that her mouth was taped shut. Other than moaning, she could not make any sound. Chapter 316. She struggled a few times to sit up, but her feet suddenly touched something soft. She was shocked and shrank into a corner. With her weak consciousness, she could tell that it was a person beside her feet. The skin was still warm, and based on the material of the clothes, she guessed that it was Li Qin. In her shock, she leaned toward Li Qin. Then, both mother and daughter woke up. However, in such an enclosed space, the two of them fell into a huge panic. With her weak vision, she seemed to be able to tell that they were in a car. Where were they going? After a bumpy ride, the car suddenly came to a steady stop. Then, there was a deathly silence. Yun Na's shoulders trembled. In her great fear, she seemed to have lost the ability to think. She only hoped that time would stop at this moment. She didn't even know what was waiting for her next. Would it be hell? She trembled as her imagination ran wild. Just as she was at a loss for what to do, the car door was suddenly flung open. Li Dongqiang stood outside the car with a group of ruffians with a cigarette in his mouth. He sneered a few times and pulled Yun Na out of the car by her hair. She screamed. Li Dongqiang frowned in displeasure and slapped her. Be quiet. What are you shouting for? He roared. Yun Na looked at him with teary eyes. Her mouth was taped shut, so she couldn't speak at all. She could only cry and beg for mercy. She knelt on the ground with a thud and kept kowtowing. Every time she kowtowed, she hit the ground hard. Her head was bleeding and she tried her best to beg for mercy to show her sincerity. In the face of fear, she didn't know what pain was anymore. She was numb. She only knew how to kowtow and fantasize that she could arouse Li Dongqiang's pity and spare her life. She had met Li Dongqiang before. He was cruel and merciless, and his hands were stained with blood. It wasn't that she hadn't seen him kill people. One shot and the head exploded. She was so scared that she vomited on the spot. However, the young her thought that such a man was cool and manly. However, when she faced death, she suddenly understood that life was so fragile. She didn't want to die. Her pleas for mercy did not awaken anyone's pity. Li Dongqiang clicked his tongue and shook his head. Yuna, if you knew this would happen, why did you give it up? What's the use of begging me for mercy? I'm just working for someone else's money. Yuna was scared out of her wits. She shook her head like a broken wave, and she kowtowed even more vigorously. As she neared death, the fear in her heart expanded infinitely. At first, when she found out that she was disfigured, she was so disheartened that she thought of killing herself. However, it wasn't until the word death was right in front of them that they realized that when they were close to death, a strong will to live would arise spontaneously. She didn't want to die. Even if he had to live an ignoble existence, he still wanted to live. Li Qin was also carried out of the carriage. Her body went limp and she no longer had the strength to beg for mercy. She was not like Yun Na, who was still young. She was already old and her physical strength was very poor. The journey was bumpy, and as soon as she got out of the car, she vomited, felt dizzy, and was in a mess. Li Dongqiang felt nauseous. The evening breeze at the port made one's cheeks hurt. The whistle of a ship could be heard in the distance. Chapter 317. When Yun Na realized where she was petrified as if she had been struck by lightning. The harbor. Was Li Dongqiang really going to listen to that child and throw them into the sea to feed the fish? Do you have any last words to say? He looked at Yun Na with pity. She had been playing with them since junior high, so it was inevitable for her to develop some revolutionary feelings. Thus, he showed her rare kindness. Yun Na shook her head with a pale face. She did not want to die. However, he mistakenly thought that she had no last words to say when she shook her head, so he signaled to the people beside him with his eyes. Remember to clean it up. Got it, Brother Chang? Li Dongqiang sneered. He stopped in front of Yun Na and gently patted her head. Sigh, poor thing. Tell me, why are you so silly? It's not that I don't want to help you. After all, we had a brief relationship before. However, you're the one who schemed against me first, so don't blame me for not caring about our relationship. With that, he stood up and watched helplessly as they were dragged away by a few footmen. Yun Na struggled with her legs flailing as she broke down and cried. At the harbor, a cargo ship was quietly anchored. Li Dongqiang was not an ordinary gangster. He had a powerful underworld organization behind him. He was involved in arms, drugs, money laundering, and everything else. Hence, he naturally had his own cargo ship. His subordinates threw Yun Na and Li Qin on the deck of the ship. With a thud, Li Qin's head hit the guardrail and she fainted. Yun Na could only watch helplessly as the cargo ship gradually left the harbor. The despair in her heart grew infinitely. Yun Tianyo's condition quickly stabilized. The attending doctor paid special attention to it and prescribed him medication to stabilize his condition before informing him to be discharged on Sunday. On the day of his discharge, from the attending doctor to the director, a row of people lined up at the entrance to respectfully send them off. Was there a need to be so high profile? Yun Shishir was speechless. Before Yu was discharged, she had already tidied up the house. She spent half a day tidying up Yu's study room. When the car drove into Xiangti Walk's bungalow district, Yun Yecheng's expression changed. Shishir, did you drive the car to the wrong place? Why did you drive here? This is the villa district. Yun Shishir broke out in cold sweat. Dad, we didn't drive the wrong way. It was only when the three of them stood at the entrance that Yun Tianyo's expression changed slightly. Mommy, this isn't our house, is it? It's our new home. Yun Shishir face-bombed, not knowing how to explain. That man inexplicably gave her a bungalow and called it a gift. The average price of the houses here is more than 100,000 yuan. Yun Yecheng's face turned pale in disbelief. You might not believe me even if I tell you. Yun Shishir took a deep breath and explained, I exchanged it for 2 bowls of noodles. Yun Yecheng, who would believe that? The two of them fell silent. 2 bowls of noodles in exchange for a house worth tens of millions? What kind of joke was this? His brows furrowed slightly. Suddenly, he thought of something and smiled without saying a word. He knew who it was. He was not used to living in his previous apartment. It was quite unsafe with all kinds of people, especially at night, when the apartment was near the notorious East Street. Xiangti Walk, Dragon Court Real Estate Group, was under Dishing Financial Group. Chapter 318. Just as the three were about to enter the house, they heard the roar of a motorcycle coming from afar. Yun Shirshir turned her head in surprise, only to see a handsome heavy-duty motorcycle parked at the garage entrance of the villa next door. A tall and slender figure came into view. She saw a tall and straight young man wearing a British trench coat and a pair of pitch-black motorcycle leather pants, which wrapped around his long legs, making them look long and stylish. The young man took off his helmet. His neat short hair was dyed white gold. He took off his sunglasses expressionlessly. A handsome face was exposed in front of everyone. Neighbor. He's so tall. It was only when he strode into a villa not far away from them that she reacted to his presence. So, he's our neighbor. He looks so familiar. Where have I seen him before? Stupid mommy, he's not a man. Yu said helplessly. She's a very famous singer. Her stage name is Junimo. Her new album has been released recently, and she's quite popular. She's actually a woman, but she's dressed neutrally. How did you know? Yun Shirshir asked in surprise. In her impression, Yu was not very interested in music. He was hopelessly tone-deaf. "'Cause I've seen her on TV before," Yu replied. What Yun Shirshir did not know was that before she signed with Huanyu, Yu had already read through all the artistes signed by Huanyu Entertainment. Thus, he had some impression of this female singer. Dad, don't stand there like a fool. The room is already prepared. Let's go in. Yun Shirshir said. Yun Yeching was still a little hesitant. Initially, he had planned to move back after Yu was discharged from the hospital. He lowered his head to look at Yu, only to see the little lad looking at him. He felt even more guilty and sighed. Yu raised his head and glanced at Yun Shirshir before turning to smile at Yun Yeching. Grandpa, why don't you stay with us? ? Yun Yeching stared at him in shock. He thought that Yu would never forgive him. She even thought that the estrangement between them would never be erased. A warm smile appeared on Yu's face. Grandpa, don't worry. It's Mommy's wish to be filial to you and serve you in your old age. You're old now, so we should all be filial to you. Yu is so sensible. Yun Shirshir happily planted a kiss on his cheek. She looked up and said, Dad, look. Yu has already said so. The child is so filial. Do you have the heart to reject the child? Yes. Yun Yeching nodded profusely as he repeated the word, yes, several times in a row. His eyes could not help but moisten. The three of them chatted and laughed as they entered the villa. Monday. Yun Shirshir woke up early, dressed up, and rushed to the headquarters of Huanyu Entertainment. The next night, Qin Zhou specially sent her a message, repeatedly reminding her not to be late. According to tradition, before the signing ceremony, there would be a personal interview with Huanyu's senior director, Ji Lin. Ji Lin, nicknamed Jian Luo, was famous for being strict and had a strong sense of punctuality. If the appointed time was not up, he would not be lenient. Previously, there was a newcomer who was good in all aspects, but because he missed the interview, he directly canceled the contract without mercy. Chapter 319. Just when she was anxious, a Maserati stopped steadily in front of her. The window was lowered, and a handsome young man's feminine face appeared. Yun Shirshir frowned slightly and recognized him at a glance. No, it was her. Junimo lived in the villa next to hers. Seeing her car stop, Yun Shirshir said in a friendly manner, Hello. Junimo took off her glasses and glanced at her with her beautiful eyes. Her thin lips curled up slightly. Get in. Yun Shirshir was a little dumbfounded by these two simple words. What do you mean? It's hard to get a taxi here. Her voice was clear and deep with a hint of hoarseness. It was a kind of feminine between genders. If one didn't listen carefully, it would be difficult to tell her gender. Aren't you rushing to Huanyu for an interview? It's on the way. Even though it was a little abrupt, time was of the essence. She couldn't care less about being pretentious and immediately nodded. Thank you. She opened the door and sat in the back seat. June Mo skillfully turned the steering wheel and stepped on the accelerator. The car sped away from Shanti Walk. Yun Shirshir put her bag aside and looked around curiously. Her gaze fell on the handsome face in the rearview mirror. The reason why a woman was described as beautiful was because June Mo, whether it was her temperament or her dressing, revealed a femininity that was different between men and women. She had the calmness and grace of a man, but also the exquisiteness and delicacy of a woman. This handsomeness had nothing to do with gender. Especially that pair of long and narrow eyes, they were deep and charming. She even felt a little stunned for a moment. In the rearview mirror, June Mo glanced at her from the corner of her eye and met her gaze. Yun Shirshir looked away awkwardly. The car was cold and damp. After a light rain last night, the weather in the early morning was a little cold. The air in the car was cold, and she was only wearing a thin shirt, so it was inevitable that she felt a little cold. June Mo glanced at Yun Shirshir's uneasy face in the rearview mirror and asked, "Cold?" "A little." June Mo looked straight ahead again. She didn't say anything but turned on the heater. Not long after, the carriage was filled with warmth. Yun Shirshir was touched by her thoughtfulness and immediately thanked her. June Mo's lips curled up, but she didn't say anything. She just took out a cigarette from the cigarette box and lit it skillfully. The lighter was a limited edition commemorative God of Fire by Zippo, and it was hard to find one on the market. A wisp of smoke filled the carriage. The smell of smoke was not strong, nor was it pungent. Instead, it smelled good. At least, it was not repulsive. The entire journey was silent. The car sped along, and the scenery outside the window flashed by. "Your name is Yun Shirshir, right?" Her eyes lit up. "How do you know my name?" "I saw you at the banquet." June Mo was silent for a moment, as if she was considering her words. In the end, she still said two simple words, "Very beautiful." Yun Shirshir blushed and smiled. "Thank you." He was a little surprised. Although June Mo looked a little arrogant and cold, she wasn't as unapproachable and unexpectedly friendly as she looked on the surface. June Mo said, "It's a good opportunity to sign with Huanyu. You have to cherish it." "Yes, I will." The car quickly drove into Huanyu Tower. "I'll drop you off here. I'll go park the car." After saying that, June Mo drove the car into the garage. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but feel flattered by her kindness. It was like a dream. It was a little unreal. Chapter 320. After all, apart from Xiao Shui, there were very few women who treated her so well since she was a child. Perhaps it was because she was not good at socializing. The darkness of her childhood made her cautious in dealing with people and other aspects. Hence, she did not have many friends. Therefore, she cherished this rare kindness very much. She looked down at the time. There was still some time before the interview. When she walked out of the elevator, Qin Zhou seemed to have just arrived at the company. When he saw her, he was a little surprised. "Ah, Shirshir, you're here so early?" "I couldn't get a taxi at the entrance. Fortunately, someone sent me here in time." "Someone sent you?" Qin Zhou was stunned. "What a coincidence." "I think it's Junimo." She learned her name from Yu. "Junimo?" Qin Zhou frowned slightly. "Where do you live now?" "Xiangdi Walk." Qin Zhou was stunned. Xiangdi Walk was a famous mansion in the capital. Where did she live? "That's a mansion. Why do you live there?" "I won the lottery," Yun Shirshir said awkwardly. "You're so lucky." Qin Zhou sighed sincerely. He led her into the office and suddenly thought of something. "Do you have a driver's license?" "Yes, but I don't know how to drive." "Yun Shirshir, can you be any more stupid?" Qin Zhou said mercilessly. Yun Shirshir said helplessly, "Are you blaming me for not knowing how to drive?" "Well, after you sign the contract, I'll arrange a car for you to take you to and from work," Qin Zhou said and brought her into the office. He filled in some information for her and patiently reminded her, "The person who will be interviewing you later is Huanyu's entertainment director. He's famous for being strict and nicknamed Ji Yenluo. You have to be careful during the interview." "Yes, I will." Yun Shirshir finished filling in the information and suddenly looked up. "If I sign the contract, will I have my own manager?" "There is." Qin Zhou took her information and looked through it carefully. Who will it be? Hee, of course it'll be me. Qin Zhou smiled and said, Xingzhe specifically asked me to take care of you. If you sign the contract with me, I'll take good care of you. Qin Zhou was Huan Yu's ace manager. Whether it was his skills, resources, or background, they were all top-notch. Just making Gu Xingze famous was an achievement that no one in Huan Yu could compare to. Even a natural idol like Gu Xingze would not be able to reach his current status without Qin Zhou's support. She had to admit that he was a very powerful person. If Gu Xingze was the king of the entertainment industry, then Qin Zhou could be described as the prime minister who supported the emperor wholeheartedly. Gu Xingze was able to get a role in a Hollywood blockbuster as soon as he debuted. He had signed several fashion commercials and produced a large number of albums. The reason was that Qin Zhou had a considerable amount of resources. What was the most important thing in the entertainment industry? Arranged in order, resources, background, strength, talent, aptitude, and appearance. Appearance could be remolded, and it was fine if one was not strong enough. However, resources and background were often things that could not be obtained even if one begged for it. People in the entertainment industry never dared to say harsh words and promote whoever they wanted. However, Qin Zhou had the confidence to do so. No matter who it was, as long as he said harsh words and supported them with all his heart, they would definitely become famous in his hands. Many popular artists had thrown him an olive branch and even hired him with a lot of money, but Qin Zhou was unmoved. Chapter 321. He only had one artist, Gu Xingze, under him. If he spent all his resources on him, others would be jealous. The entertainment industry was full of dangers. Gu Xingze was naturally worried about assigning Yun Shishir to another manager. He was afraid that he would be devoured until not even his bones were left. Therefore, Qin Zhou personally came to manage Yun Shishir. Resources were another matter. At least with Qin Zhou's methods and background, he was definitely a reliable manager. Qin Zhou urged, fill in these documents first. The director's office is next door. I'll bring you to see him. There were only 2 offices on the 18th floor of Huanyu. One was for Ji Lin, and the other was for Qin Zhou. It was obvious that Qin Zhou had a pivotal position in Huanyu. Yun Shishir had just finished filling in a stack of documents when Qin Zhou took out another stack of documents like magic. She was stunned. Why are there so many? These are all model contracts. Take a closer look. After the interview, the director will sign it. Is it a contract to sell myself? She rolled her eyes suspiciously. Qin Zhou rolled his eyes back and smiled evilly. Yes, it's a contract to sell yourself. Hurry up and sign it, and you'll be mine. Qin Zhou was good in every way, but he was usually a little indecent and sharp-tongued. She vaguely remembered the last time at Empress Fashion Club, he had stabbed Xiao Dong of the Xiao group with a few words. Xiao Dong had a pair of fierce eyes that wanted to destroy him. Yun Shishir suddenly said strangely, you seem to be very free today. Where's Xingze? He went to Milan for a fashion show and will return the day after tomorrow, Qin Zhou said and suddenly teased. But, do you miss him? Don't talk nonsense, Yun Shishir said angrily. Qin Zhou snorted coldly. How heartless. After a pause, he gossiped again. To be honest, Xingze seems to be a little too concerned about you. Sai, look at him. He went to Milan to watch the show and left me alone in the company to deal with the mess. Mess? Qin Zhou stretched out his finger and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. With a tired face, he said, yeah, what a huge mess. Naturally, he would not tell Yun Shishir that Gu Xingze had offended Yang Shouqing because of her. He hadn't been able to sleep well for the past few days as he had been dealing with this matter. He didn't know what was wrong with that kid. Of all the people he could have offended, he chose to offend Yang Shouqing, the boss of the European king. During the most glorious period of Hong Kong movies, Yang Shouqing had an unshakable position in the entertainment industry. Even though Hong Kong's movies were gradually declining, Elder Yang's status was still there. He actually went to injure someone? He didn't mind the trouble, but the trouble was that if the Gu family found out about his actions, there would be some criticism. Gu Xingze's brother was even harder to please than Master Yang. He was in a terrible fix. What happened? Just as Yun Shirshir finished speaking, there was a sudden commotion outside the door. Qin Zhou frowned and opened the door, only to see Tang Yu blocked at the door of the director's office. She wanted to enter but was stopped by Ji Lin's assistant. Tang Yu's assistant and Tang Yu were in a deadlock, staring at each other. Why is she here? Didn't she already terminate her contract? Qin Zhou sneered and muttered. She still dares to look for Ji Yanluo. Is she looking for a scolding? Chapter 322. Tang Yu? Terminated the contract? Yun Shirshir gossiped for once. Why did Tang Yu terminate the contract? Qin Zhou turned around and complained, My dear miss, don't you read the entertainment news on a regular basis? In any case, you're someone who's about to enter the entertainment industry. You should at least pay attention to the news in the industry. Yun Shirshir was ashamed. I don't usually watch TV. You tell me. Yun Shirshir's gossipy soul was burning fiercely. Qin Zhou sneered. What else can it be? The news about her unspoken rules is all over the city. Huan Yu has always valued the image of its artists. Now that she's notorious, who else can they kick out but her? Not only that, as an artist, a few advertisers have withdrawn their contracts with her. The few movies she signed were forced to change actors midway. The losses are huge. She even has to pay the liquidated damages to the company. Yun Shirshir's lips twitched. Unspoken rules? She was fine when he saw her at the cocktail party. In just a few days, such a big change happened? Things were still the same, but people had changed. Slap. Qin Zhou was too lazy to explain so much. He just threw a stack of newspapers in front of her. Yun Shirshir flipped through it and frowned in surprise. Wow, that was too explosive. But what she didn't know was that it was all fate's fault. If Mu Yaja hadn't arrived in time, she would have been the one to appear on the headlines. But a certain someone was still oblivious to the ins and outs of the matter and was still reading the newspapers gloatingly. The newspapers published the headlines for a few days, reporting on this incident. Even now, the news was still hot and had been the topic of conversation for the public. Tang Yu returned to the villa with Huan Yu's top management late at night and didn't leave. The reporters arrived in time. What was more shocking was that the two of them were so anxious that they forgot to close the curtains. The reporters took photos and videos and spread them all over the internet. It was too late to ban them. Actually, after the incident, Tang Yu's studio secretly contacted the paparazzi and offered to buy all the videos and photos in their hands at a sky-high price. They wanted to destroy the evidence and at least suppress the limelight at the critical moment. Unfortunately, these reporters refused no matter what. Even with 7 figures, they could only buy a few photos. Who's afraid of who? Their photos had already been bought by a mysterious investor at a high price. He wanted to ruin Tang Yu's reputation. Tang Yu Studio's crisis was just a last-ditch struggle. In just one night, Tang Yu's fans on Weibo had dropped by a few million. At this stage, she was still losing fans. Tang Yu was dumbfounded when he saw that his path to stardom was destroyed. He could not recover from the setback. That was not all. Blessings never come in pairs, and misfortunes never come singly. Huan Yu received several notices in succession. A few advertisers proposed to terminate their contracts. Tang Yu's roles in the TV series and movies that she was filming in were removed. Even if it was a finished film, there was not a single bit of her scene left. Now that her reputation was in tatters, Huan Yu was facing a sky-high penalty for breaching the contract. The higher-ups were furious. For companies, artists were like products. Without popularity, they would have no value. Huan Yu Entertainment and Tang Yu's studio laid their cards on the table and proposed to terminate the contract. Tang Yu was about to face a sky-high penalty of 9 figures. How pitiful! A pitiful person must have something hateful, Yun Shirshir said. Chapter 323. Stop fooling around. Yun Shirshir slapped his hand away. Just as Tang Yu was feeling depressed, she saw that Qin Zhou's office was open. She rolled her eyes and walked in with a smile. Nobody knew what she was thinking. Chairman Qin. When she saw him, she would first sweetly compliment him. Qin Zhou held shares in Huan Yu. Therefore, artists and staff who were of a lower level had to respectfully address him as Chairman Qin, even if they weren't A-listers. Qin Zhou knew that she was up to no good. He rolled his eyes lazily. What? Tang Yu was about to speak when she entered the room. She was dumbfounded when she saw Yun Shirshir, who was sitting at the side and signing an agreement. Yun Shirshir. Why you here? It's none of your business. Mind your own business. Qin Zhou reminded her coldly. Tang Yu remembered what she was here for. She said coquettishly, Chairman Qin, you have to help me. Her soft voice gave Qin Zhou goosebumps all over his body. Don't act coquettishly if you don't know how to. As soon as he spoke, he felt a chill run down his spine and goosebumps appeared all over his body. Help you with what? I don't know which B***Ts did this to me. My reputation is ruined and the company wants to terminate my contract. Chairman Qin, you have a lot of say in the company. Also, you're such a good friend of Director Ji. Can you talk to Director Ji for me? Tang Yu felt wrong too. She was a little drunk at the cocktail party that day. In order to seek a better future, she clung onto Mu Yaja, thinking that she could climb into his bed. Little did she expect that he would throw her into a car and drive her to Li Wenqing's villa. Li Wenqing was one of Huan Yu's top executives and one of the company's shareholders. He also had a seat on the board of directors. He had played with many women. In a way, he could be considered Tang Yu's old flame. They had been together for a while. The few movie contracts that Tang Yu accepted were all resources provided by him. Tang Yu was a little surprised to see him. However, she thought that it was all arranged and that he had personally picked her. She did not suspect anything. Li Wenqing was also a little suspicious when he saw her. Didn't he personally pick the newcomer from the cocktail party? Her name was Yun Shirshir. Why did he send Tang Yu instead? However, in the middle of the night, he had nowhere to vent his lust. As soon as Tang Yu entered the room, the two of them were entangled together. After that, he didn't expect that he would be plotted against. The pictures and text were well illustrated, and the evidence was conclusive. No matter how capable the public relations team was, they were at their wits' end. It would be difficult for them to clear their names. Qin Zhou had a headache and waved his hand. Get lost. Don't bother me. I'm also in a mess. I can't even save myself. There's still a mess that gives Xiao Qin a headache? Qin Zhou was annoyed. Tang Yu, now that things have come to this, nobody can save you. If you really want me to point you out a way out, seeing that you're young and have good potential, I'll be kind and introduce you to a film contract. Tang Yu's eyes brightened. He couldn't hide his excitement. Really? President Qin, I knew you wouldn't leave me in the lurch. What kind of movie is it? Qin Zhou smiled evilly. Golden Lotus 3D. F***CK. Playing with her? Jean Ping Mei 3D? That was a third-rate movie, okay? What was this? What kind of kindness was this? He was obviously kicking her when she was down. Was he waiting to see her embarrass herself? No matter what, she was still a B-list starlet. She was also a popular teen idol. How could he let her star in such a low-class movie? Tang Yu was so angry that her face turned red. Chapter 324. I'm a teen idol, and you want me to star in a third-rate film? Tang Yu said angrily. Oh, you're still flattering yourself? Teen idol? You made such a big scene this time, and the video is all over the city. Who hasn't seen you naked? Why are you being so pretentious? Qin Zhou mocked. Tang Yu was speechless. Don't underestimate this resource. How many female stars are lining up to be in it? For a role in it, they're fighting so hard. Don't you care? Qin Zhou said disapprovingly. This was a blatant humiliation. Tang Yu felt so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. She said angrily, President Qin, are you hitting me when I'm down? Qin Zhou pretended to be wronged. Oh, you're biting me. I'm helping you out of kindness, and you're saying that I'm hitting you when you're down. Recommending you to this film is already a compliment to you. Don't you know what your reputation is? Even if it's for my sake, the director might not choose you. Tang Yu was so angry that she stomped her feet. Suddenly, she glanced at Yun Shirshir from the corner of her eye. The latter's pen paused, and she felt a chill run down her spine. She looked up and saw Tang Yu glaring at her. What was this? She got shot even when she was lying down? Yun Shirshir, what are you doing in Huanyu? Signing a contract, Yun Shirshir said coldly. Signing a contract? Tang Yu was shocked. You signed a contract with Huanyu just like that? Usually, it was impossible for a newcomer to sign a contract with Huanyu Entertainment right after their debut unless they had a strong background. No matter how good their qualifications were, they were the first in history to sign a contract with the headquarters right after their debut. There were 2 big studios under Huanyu. Usually, newcomers who just debuted would sign a contract with a studio first. Huanyu would only seriously consider signing a contract when they had some fame. As the dream factory of the entertainment industry, Huanyu's requirements to sign a contract were very high. Tang Yu's eyes were sharp. She saw the contract in her hand. It was indeed a model contract, and there was also a signing letter. She was so jealous that her eyes turned red. It was scary. I don't know what kind of despicable methods she used. Who are you talking about? Without waiting for Qin Zhou to speak, Yun Shirshir asked coldly, watch your mouth. Tang Yu was stunned. At the banquet, Yun Shirshir was considered a gentle and soft persimmon. Why was his mouth so sharp today? He was no longer as submissive as before. Or was it because she had lost her power that even a newcomer who had yet to debut did not put her in her eyes? When a tiger leaves the plains, it will be bullied by dogs. Her lips curled into a smile. It wasn't that she bullied the weak and feared the strong. Previously at the cocktail party, she was worried about her image. As a newcomer, she naturally couldn't show off too much at such an occasion. Otherwise, offending one person was tantamount to offending a group of people. In the entertainment industry, seniority was the most important thing. If a newcomer who had yet to debut was too ostentatious, it was inevitable that he would be surrounded and suppressed. However, now that they were in private, what was there to talk about? You've got it upside down. Now, I'm the tiger and you're the dog. So what if I bullied you? Haven't you heard of the saying, beat a dog when it's down? Qin Zhou was surprised. This girl's mouth was quite vicious. Where did she learn it from? Tang Yu was so angry that she raised her hand. Qin Zhou quickly stopped her. Oh my God! This is my office. How dare you behave so atrociously? Chapter 325. It's not that I want to nag at you, but what's the point of arguing with her? She's barefoot now, so she's not afraid of you. Don't pester her endlessly. Yun Shirshir nodded. Tang Yu was so angry that her eyes almost popped out. You, get lost. Qin Zhou waved his hand as if he was shooing away a fly. Don't dirty my precious feng shui. What's the fuss about? Outside the office, Ji Lin stood with his arms crossed and looked at Qin Zhou and the others coldly. Yun Shirshir looked toward the voice. The rumored director Ji Yanluo was actually younger than she had expected. He was about 28 years old and wore a mature business suit. His hairstyle was meticulously styled, making him look especially energetic. He was handsome and had eyebrows like stars. His facial features were more regular and he looked very mature. However, he was just as the rumor said. He was serious and his face was cold. His aura was intimidating and his eyes were dignified. Tang Yu, you still have the face to step into Huanyu? If you have the time to pester me, why don't you think about it yourself? Your studio can't even handle the most basic public relations crisis. Ji Lin said coldly. Currently, Huanyu's decision to deal with you is only to terminate your contract. If you continue to pester us endlessly, you'll have to face Huanyu's ban. Every word was like a gem and sent chills down her spine. Banning order. Once Huanyu's ban came out, she would have no chance to make a comeback. Tang Yu was still making her final struggle. Director Ji, can't you give me another chance? This time, there was a villain who plotted against me. It won't happen again. I've been loyal to Huanyu for so many years. Even if I didn't make any contributions, I've at least worked hard. Next time? There's a next time? Ji Lin said mercilessly, you don't have any acting skills or EQ. Not only that, but your IQ is also so low. Haven't you caused enough trouble for me? You're worthless now. Get lost. Director Ji, shut up. Ji Lin said angrily and pointed at the elevator. Get lost. Tang Yu's entire body withered. Seeing that there was no room for negotiation, he could only leave dejectedly. Before she left, she turned around and glared at Yun Shirshir. Then she stomped her feet and left. Ji Lin turned around and scolded his assistant. Do you know how to do things? Wouldn't you ask the security to chase away such a person? The assistant lowered his head with a mournful expression. He accepted the scolding and did not say a word. Yun Shirshir was stunned. This Ji Yanluo had a fiery temper. He probably worked overtime again last night. Working overtime? After the banquet, he had to clean up the mess. I didn't sleep well last night, and Tang Yu shamelessly came here to make trouble. How could I not be angry? With that, Qin Zhou immediately picked up the contract letter that Yun Shirshir had filled out neatly and walked up to her in a flirtatious manner. Old Ji, you're so angry early in the morning. Be careful not to hurt your kidneys. Yun Shirshir, Ji Lin rolled his eyes. Have you dealt with Gu Xing's matter? This time, it was Qin Zhou's turn to be listless. No, then you have the nerve to come and see me? Ji Lin poked his head. Take care of your artist. Don't think that he can look down on old Master Yang just because he has the Gu family's support. Qin Zhou said gloomily, I went to the hospital to see old Master Yang yesterday. His injury is not serious. It's just a small injury. He said that he wanted me to hand the person over to him and he would deal with it himself. Chapter 326. Qin Zhou brought Yun Shirshir into the director's office and retreated from the room. Sit. Wait for one more person. With that, he picked up the file and looked at it. Another person? Who could it be? Was she not the only one who signed the contract today? Yun Shirshir sat on the chair and looked around carefully. The decoration of the office was simple and everything was neatly arranged. There were several celebrity portraits on the wall. They were all A-list celebrities under Huanyu. Among them, Gu Xing's portrait was among them. There were many books and albums on the bookshelf. There was a short table in front of the sofa with a high-end tea set on it. There was a knock on the door. Yun Shirshir turned her head in confusion and saw that it was Jun Emo who walked in. Seeing that it was her, Yun Shirshir smiled. Jun Emo nodded, closed the door, and sat down beside her. Director Ji. Ji Lin raised his wrist and looked at his watch. He said coldly, You're always on time. You won't appear until the last minute. Jun Emo said indifferently, I just had a smoke outside. You're quite free and elegant? Ji Lin said. Jun Mo's lips curled as she turned to look at Yun Shirshir and slowly reached out her hand. Her voice was not very warm or intimate, but there was a faint smile in her eyes. Yun Shirshir smiled and shook her hand. Yes. Everyone is here. Let's start. Ji Lin sat at his desk and held the contract filled out by Yun Shirshir. He asked indifferently, Yun Shirshir. Yes, Director. Have you read the contents of the contract carefully? I have, she replied. Do you have any objections? No objections. Ji Lin asked a few more questions, and Yun Shirshir answered them one by one. As a student of Media College, Ji Lin was very satisfied with her professionalism and conduct. But in the end, Ji Lin sternly stated a few conditions to her. Since you've read the contract carefully, you should be clear about the conditions. I hope you can abide by them. Understood. Ji Lin raised his head, looked at her deeply, and slowly said, Your aptitude is very good, but I need to give you a word of advice. Yun Shirshir was all ears. Please speak. No matter what you were. But from the moment you signed the contract with Huanyu, as a public figure, I hope you will be careful with your words and actions. Yun Shirshir was stunned. What happened just now, I don't want it to happen again. Yes, I understand. Perhaps your impression of the entertainment industry is still limited to the reports on TV and entertainment magazines. But here, I still want to give you a piece of advice. As an artist, the company's arrangements are simple. Be obedient and do as you are told. Don't touch what you shouldn't touch. Don't make mistakes that you shouldn't, understand? Jun Emo was a little surprised. In her impression, this Ji Lin did not seem like a patient person. Yet he gave her advice. Did it seem like he was taking special care of her? Ji Lin turned to discuss the renewal of the contract with Jun Mo. Yun Shishir listened at the side. It turned out that Jun Mo's contract with Huan Yu had expired. Her aptitude was very promising, and the company hoped that she could renew the contract. In addition, her previous manager was hospitalized with cancer and the position had been empty. Ji Lin planned to assign her a new manager. Chapter 327. Among the many artists signed by Huan Yu, Junjun's talent was outstanding. She was a rock singer and had her own band. She had debuted for 5 years, and with her unique personality, outstanding appearance, and excellent singing skills, she had a group of awe-inspiring loyal fans. Her popularity was high, and she had always been the focus of Huan Yu's grooming. In the entertainment industry, if one was good at singing, they would act. Ji Lin's plan for her was to enter the film industry and transform into an actress. In the music industry, the popularity of rock singers did not last long. If they did not transform, their accumulated popularity would eventually decline. In the end, they came up with a plan. Ji Lin would manage Gu Xingze under his own name, and let Qin Zhou manage Yun Shishir and Junjun. Without a doubt, this had been confirmed with Qin Zhou. Qin Zhou readily agreed. With the abundant resources in his hands, managing 2 newcomers was not a big problem. Gu Xingze was now at the peak of his popularity. He was about to set up his own record company, and the company would focus on planning for him. Qin Zhou, a general, could be considered to have retired after accomplishing his mission. Yun Shishir was a little flattered. For a newcomer like her to sign a contract with Huan Yu right after her debut, and even be assigned under a top manager, was a beautiful thing that many people in the industry did not dare to dream of. Ji Lin called Qin Zhou in. Qin Zhou brought a few more contracts and asked them to fill them one by one. From now on, you are my people. Qin Zhou looked at them with satisfaction, his heart full of excitement. Ji Lin said, Qin Zhou, have you really thought it through? I have. Qin Zhou looked relaxed and calm, his handsome face showing calmness. I, Qin Zhou, have done my best to accompany Xingze until now. Now that Xingze has achieved success, I also want to make a comeback. As he said this, he smiled meaningfully. Men always have a strong desire to conquer, whether it's a woman or a career. After that day, the news of Qin Zhou and Gu Xingze terminating their contract spread like wildfire. Huan Yu's internal staff was shocked. It was undoubtedly a heavy bomb. Some people were happy, while others were worried. He was happy that Qin Zhou had terminated his contract with Gu Xingze. If he could work with this top manager, with the superior resources in his hands, he would definitely be able to ride the wind and soar. Unfortunately, it was rumored that Qin Zhou had managed a newcomer. But before the press conference, no one knew who this lucky newcomer was. There were also some people who were surprised. In the entertainment industry, water flowed down to the bottom while people walked up to the top. Why didn't she rely on a superstar and now wanted to terminate her contract? That's a story for another day. Ji Lin put away Yun Shishir and Jun Mo's contracts, stood up and walked to them. I hope you guys can work harder. Don't make me doubt my judgment. Jun Mo reached out and shook Ji Lin's hand. She looked confident and proud. Thank you, Director. Thank you for your appreciation, Director Ji. I will work hard. Yun Shishir also shook hands with Ji Lin. Ji Lin sized her up from top to bottom. Remember, I don't look at the process. I only look at the results. Qin Zhou smiled and said, Old Ji, are you still worried about me? Don't worry. Jun Mo and Shishir are in my hands. I will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. Before that, you have to clean up the mess first before we talk about anything else. Ji Lin said indifferently. Chapter 328. Before that, you have to clean up the mess first before we talk about anything else, Ji Lin said indifferently. Qin Zhou was instantly depressed again. At noon, Qin Zhou, Yun Shishir, and Jun Mo had a simple lunch before taking a short break in the company. Jun Mo sat on the leather chair, adjusted it to a comfortable angle, and closed her eyes to rest. Qin Zhou led Yun Shishir on a tour of Huan Yu's headquarters building and introduced it to her floor by floor. Huan Yu's headquarters towered into the clouds and was extremely spectacular. It was a full 50 floors high and was unreachable. It was Yun Shirshir's first time visiting this entertainment empire that was the focus of the world's attention. Huanyu had 2 major film and TV production companies and 3 authoritative media companies. Whether it was movies, TV series, or records, Huanyu had everything in one place. The huge entertainment empire was run in the entire building. As the famous Dream Factory, any name of the artistes signed by Huanyu was like thunder to one's ears. In today's entertainment industry, the 4 new female stars, the 4 ancient actors, Yang Mi, Han Yin, Yan Bingqing, Li Jiuxian, Lu Junyu. These hot names were all signed by Huanyu. Huanyu was no longer just a milestone. It was already an industry giant that monopolized the entertainment empire. Qin Zhou took her to the rehearsal room, recording studio, and interview hall. He also brought her to meet a few famous film and TV series producers and directors under Huanyu. Yun Shirshir's elegant manner of speaking left a deep impression on many people. Everyone had high hopes for this newcomer. Then, Qin Zhou gave her a general introduction of Huanyu's treatment. The treatment was unexpectedly good. The remuneration ratio on the contract was very generous. Generally speaking, the remuneration ratio for the artistes signed by Huanyu was generally 70% for the company and 30% for the artistes because of the training and packaging of the newcomers. As for her share, it was 50-50. What did that mean? Let's say that according to the remuneration for the movie, The Green Apple, Gu Xingzi's contract with Huanyu was 60% to 40%, and the remuneration was 50 million. Then, the company would deduct 20 million from this basis, and the remaining 60%, which was 30 million, would fall into his pocket. This was already the highest treatment in Huanyu. She, on the other hand, was paid 5 million yuan. In her hands, she received a full 50%, which was 5 million yuan. Other than that, Huanyu would also provide a car for the artists to pick them up. She was given a Volkswagen Phaeton. Even if it was a newcomer who had just debuted, the company would do their best to reduce public exposure. Huanyu had done a lot of homework on how to protect their artists' privacy. Even the most highly trained paparazzi wouldn't be able to catch the slightest movement of an artist from Huanyu. As for the private photos of celebrities on the entertainment media websites, they were just celebrities seeking exposure and cooperating to create hype. What awaited her next was a long and intensive training course. One of the most important aspects was the cultivation of the actors. Yun Shirshir was outstanding whether it was in terms of external conditions, appearance, temperament, manners, or internal conditions, such as conversation, etiquette, and acting skills. He only lacked the tempering of his works. In the history of Huanyu, there had never been an artist who had both beauty and acting skills. It was also because of this that Ji Lin paid special attention to her. Chapter 329. In terms of public relations, how to deal with the tricky and demanding questions of the entertainment reporters, how to handle interviews, and a series of speaking techniques. The company required that the actors had to be fluent and flawless. Gu Xingzi was a textbook example. No matter how demanding the questions were, he could rely on his good reflexes to fend them off. Even in the face of the all-pervasive media, he could handle it with ease. Tang Yu was a classic example of a negative example. She had good looks and good acting skills, but her EQ was extremely low and she spoke without thinking. Everyone knew how she ended up. She fell from being a godly detective to the bottom of the valley. In the current situation of the entertainment industry, artists were no longer the same as before, where they were held high and mighty. Even if you were the nation's goddess, a single mistake in your words would immediately attract an avalanche of anti-fans. Apart from that, there was a series of classes. Her schedule was packed to the brim for a whole month. Apart from that, the opening ceremony of The Green Apple was also imminent. Qin Zhou informed her to go to the temporary filming set in 3 days to complete the trial photo shoot. In short, her schedule was packed to the brim with no gaps. The moment she received the schedule, she froze. It's so packed. Yun Shirshir protested a little. There were 30 days in a month, and 29 days were scheduled. The remaining day was to go to the filming set for the trial photo shoot. This schedule was unbelievably tight. Is this still considered full? Qin Zhou chuckled. Then you haven't seen Gu Xing's schedule. His schedule? Was there a schedule more packed than hers? You haven't officially stepped into this industry, but I've already been merciful to you. Take a look at Gu Xing's schedule. Qin Zhou passed Gu Xing's schedule to her lightly. Yun Shishir glanced at it curiously and almost fainted. Half a month was only 15 days, but he had a total of 32 events scheduled. Apart from the events, he spent the rest of his time flying in the sky. He probably had very little sleep every day. She felt a little sorry for him. Celebrities looked glamorous on the surface, but she didn't know that they were so tired behind the scenes. She furrowed her brows and complained, "This is exploitation." Qin Zhou complained, "What do you mean by exploitation?" Sure, you might not know this, but to a celebrity, exposure means life. This is like the same product. One is placed in the front of the supermarket, the other is placed in the corner of the supermarket. Which one do you think will sell better? Of course it's the former, she said without hesitation. As long as you understand. Qin Zhou suddenly said in a low voice, Sure, you have to remember that in this industry, you have to be careful with your words and actions. Just like what Yan Luoji said, if you accidentally offend someone, they might even ban you from the market. When that time comes, it won't be as simple as just lying in a corner. Yun Shishir naturally understood the meaning of his words. When the time comes, I'll definitely be kicked into the warehouse to collect dust. Smart. Qin Zhou smiled. Aren't you stupid? It's all thanks to President Qin's good teaching. Naughty girl, you've got guts. Now you know how to make fun of people? Qin Zhou scolded with a smile. In the same batch of trainees, Yun Shishir's name was especially prominent. Among the 15 newcomers, she was the only one who could sign a contract with Huanyu's headquarters. She had just debuted and was already the #1 female lead in a gold medal director's movie. What made people jealous was that the moment she entered the company, she was assigned to the ace manager, Qin Zhou. Chapter 330. Many people started to mutter in their hearts. What kind of background did this newbie have? It was obvious that Huanyu wanted to groom her. She had not even debuted, but she was already chosen by a famous director and was given the role of the female lead. Lin Fengtian was a famous gold medal director in the entertainment industry. He had always been strict, but he actually chose an unknown newbie? In the history of the entertainment industry, there was no example of Lin Fengtian's movies not being popular. Many people racked their brains and still could not get a supporting role in his movies. Not only that, many celebrities were not qualified to be invited to Huanyu's annual cocktail party. Not only did Yun Shishir receive Gu Xing's invitation, she even became Gu Xing's female companion. Putting all these aside, being able to directly sign a contract with Huanyu's headquarters made many people so jealous that they gritted their teeth. What was even more frightening was that she had an ace manager behind her. It would be a miracle if this newbie did not become popular. Among the newbies, many were jealous of her. She had not even debuted, but she already had such excellent resources. They could not wait to be jealous. Therefore, Yun Shishir was inevitably ignored and questioned in the training class. However, she did not care at all. She had more opportunities than others. Any normal person would look at her with suspicion and jealousy. However, it was because of this that she had to work harder than them and cherish this opportunity more than they did. Strength was the best proof for her. After a week of high-intensity training, Yun Shishir was completely exhausted. She was very tired, much more tired than when she went to work. Her body could not bear the burden. Even so, her willpower was considered to be the strongest in the entire class. Many people could not persevere in the face of hellish high-intensity training. The trainees in the training class were cut in batches. In less than a week, half of the trainees were cut. On this day, after the training class, Yun Shishir walked to the lounge. She only felt that her head was heavy and her feet were light. She was still dizzy. The excessive pressure caused her to be unable to sleep well for several days. She muddle-headedly held onto the wall and groped her way to her lounge. She thought to herself, training classes have been packed to the brim for a month. Now, it's only been a week and she can't take it anymore. What will she do for the rest of the classes? Leaning against the door, Yun Shirshir touched the key with one hand. Under Qin Zhou's special care, she had her own private lounge. She turned on her phone and saw a missed call. She stared at Yu's name on the screen and couldn't help but reveal a gentle smile. For the next few days, the school was holding an international children's summer camp in Minghai City. She was not free, so Yun Yecheng accompanied the little lad. Just as he was about to dial the number back, his fingertips suddenly paused. This little guy should be having a good time right now. Now that she was busy with work, she rarely had time to go out with the little guy. It was rare for the school to hold a summer camp, so she would let him have a good time. Yun Shirshir closed her phone. Forget it, it's better not to disturb him. Opening the door, the room was brightly lit. She had just walked in when she heard a devilish voice leisurely say, "Welcome back, with pleasure." Yun Shirshir could not help but be shocked. Before she could react, she was on high alert. She turned around and looked outside the door nervously for a while before she slammed the door shut and locked it. Chapter 331. Mu Yaja, what are you doing here? Wasn't he supposed to be busy? On the sofa, Mu Yaja elegantly propped up his upper body. The lapel of his black shirt was slightly open, revealing his well-defined chest. He was wearing a pair of handsome, slim-fit trousers and a pair of expensive handmade leather shoes. His long legs were crossed elegantly, giving him a noble and unruly posture. She had to admit that his figure was very muscular and sexy. Every part of his body was perfect and well-proportioned. A silver necklace dangled between his collarbones, complementing his fair and flawless skin. It was very charming. He had flown to America a while ago and had just gotten off the plane today. His face was weary, and his black hair was slightly messy. It covered his sharp eyebrows and intertwined with his long and thick eyelashes, casting a shadow on his eyelids. Mu Yaja held a cigarette between his fingers, and the room was filled with a faint aroma. Yun Shirshir stood rooted to the ground and asked with a frown, "How did you get in? And how did you know that this is my resting room? Didn't anyone stop you?" This passageway was blocked by the security guards and was heavily guarded. How did he get in so quietly? "Stop me!" Mu Yaja found her words very interesting. "Huanyu Tower is mine, and it's huge. Who dares to stop me?" His words did make some sense. "Aren't you afraid of being photographed by the reporters?" Yun Shirshir said helplessly. "What a stiff tone. It sounds very uncomfortable." Mu Yaja smiled devilishly. He put out the cigarette and hooked his finger at her. "Shirshir, come here." Shirshir, this was the first time he had called her by her name. His tone was devilishly charming with a hint of gentleness. Yun Shirshir was caught off guard, and a part of her heart collapsed. "Come here." Seeing that she wasn't moving, a hint of displeasure appeared on his face. Yun Shirshir could faintly smell danger. She shook her head and took a few steps back. With her back against the door, she said gloomily, "I'm not going over." Mu Yaja curled his lips, his thick eyelashes hiding the mischievous smile in his eyes. "But she also has a little temper." "No, Mr. Siu, how would I dare to be angry with you?" Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile. "Come here." She turned her face away awkwardly and stood still. Mu Yaja found her awkward look very interesting. "You know what? The more you act like this, the harder it is for me to restrain myself." Yun Shirshir blushed. The ambiguous meaning in his words was obvious. She immediately frowned and said, "Are you a beast?" "I'm hungry." Mu Yaja's tongue curled into a frivolous smile. "A hungry man is very scary. Don't try to arouse my desire to conquer." Then he leaned forward calmly. "Good girl, come here." "Hey, do you want me to go over, or do you want to come over?" Leaning back in his chair, Mu Yaja lowered his gaze and answered, 3, 2, 1. Mu Yaja pretended to get up. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but shudder when she saw this. She quickly braced herself and walked over. The man was leaning on the sofa with one hand supporting his head and a mischievous smile on his lips. Chapter 332. Before she could finish her sentence, Mu Yaja grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his embrace. His slender fingers lifted her chin. The man couldn't wait any longer as he lowered his eyes and kissed her lips. His body missed her a little. In the past few days in America, he had missed this woman all the time. He missed her shy and coquettish look. He missed the way she glared at him angrily. Even more, he missed the way she shyly waited under his body. Extremely charming. He missed her as if he had been poisoned by some kind of parasite. It was as if only she could cure the poison in his body. She was his poison, and also his antidote. The tip of his tongue hooked into her slightly opened lips and danced around her sweetness. The faint fragrance of smoke lingered between his lips and teeth. Yun Shirshir's heartbeat suddenly sped up, and a flirtatious blush surfaced on her cheeks. At first, the kiss had a hint of attacking a city. He pressed on step by step, and she retreated step by step. However, gradually his kiss slowly became gentle. Mu Yaja supported his body with one hand, and the other domineeringly wrapped around her waist. He got up slightly and lazily leaned against the sofa. He hugged her to sit on his knees, and with one hand holding onto her thighs, his right hand tightly wrapped around the back of her neck. Using this position, he deepened the kiss. The tip of his tongue gently traced the shape of his lips. The kiss was soft, gentle, and soft, but it also seemed to have a faint trace of electricity. A trembling numbness instantly spread throughout her limbs and bones, and her body unconsciously began to heat up. The instinctive reaction hidden deep in her heart was easily dug out by him. Yun Shirshir's breathing lost its stability and became slightly rough. Elan's kiss always had a terrifying magical power that could easily ignite the passion in the depths of her heart. Mu Yaja smiled mischievously. His left hand evilly lifted her lapel and casually untied her knot. His ice-cold fingertips seemed to brush across her collarbone and skin. Yun Shirshir was shocked and reached out to hold his hand. "What are you doing?" "I don't understand you." Yun Shirshir blushed as if she didn't understand the hidden meaning in his words. Mu Yaja smiled and held her fingertips, guiding them to his chest. When her fingertips touched his buttons, Yun Shirshir's face immediately turned red. He had become more sensitive after not touching her for a few days. It was just a deep kiss, but her face was completely red, all the way to her ears. It was kind of cute. Mu Yaja said, "I didn't say that I was hungry. Woman, feed me. If you're hungry, let's go eat." Yun Shirshir was both embarrassed and annoyed. "Woman, do you really not understand, or are you pretending not to understand?" Mu Yaja licked and kissed the corner of her lips. The tip of his nose pressed against hers as he said softly, "Eat you, don't you understand?" This time he understood. But Yun Shirshir sucked in a deep breath of cold air. She swallowed hard and pressed her hands against his chest. "No. Why can't I sleep with my woman? Why was this man so domineering?" Yun Shirshir was a little angry. She was extremely tired now and wanted to eat a full meal. Then, she wanted to take a short and comfortable nap to replenish her sleep. But heaven didn't fulfill her wish. Mu Yaja looked at her evasive gaze and felt a little unhappy. Thus, he pinched her chin and covered her mouth with his thin lips again. Chapter 333. Pressing against her soft lips, he said in a low voice, "I missed you." His tone was filled with rare tenderness. It was a poison that no woman could resist. It was as if it had seeped into her bones and numbed all her nerves. At that moment, Yun Shirshir was powerless to resist. Hugging her waist, he turned her around and pressed her against the corner of the sofa as he slowly inched closer to her. She didn't even have the slightest leeway before her lips were softly sealed by his again. This time, the kiss wasn't as aggressive as before. His originally cold lips had some warmth under her tenderness. The deep kiss filled her mouth. He was no longer satisfied with just tasting her. He always craved more for her. She was like a mysterious treasure that tempted people to explore. The man's heavy body covered her body. She was so thin that she couldn't bear such strength. Her small hands pushed hard. Under the force, her lips and teeth tightened, blocking all his attacks outside the door. Mu Yaja reached out and pinched her chin. His fingertips pressed hard against her teeth. She felt the pain and couldn't help but open her mouth to compromise. A refreshing breath rushed in, covering her sweet lips and tongue, invading her. His attacks were gradual. Her beauty was hard to find words to describe in the world. Mu Yaja held the back of her neck. His slender fingers slowly entered her hair. He suddenly kissed her fiercely. In his passion, he couldn't wait to integrate her into his bones and blood. Knock, knock, knock. Someone suddenly knocked on the door. Yun Shirshir's eyes suddenly opened and she woke up in an instant. Her fading rationality gradually came back. She turned her head in shock and heard a woman's voice outside the door. Shirshir, are you there? The person outside the door was actually a newcomer from the same batch as her, Jiang Yutong. She was 23 years old and came to Beijing alone when she was in her teens. After struggling for several years, she won the opportunity to sign a contract with Huanyu Pictures. She was a newcomer with good qualifications. If she could achieve good results in this training, she could sign a contract with Huanyu Pictures and officially debut. Without waiting for her response, the woman turned the doorknob but found that it would not budge. Sure, I left my jacket in your lounge. Come in and get it. Are you there? Why is the door locked? The air was filled with a soft and charming aura that flowed ambiguously. He did not stop at all because of the commotion outside the door. She couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She pushed Mu Yaja, who was on top of her, but the man didn't react at all. He ignored the disturbance outside the door. She could not help but feel a little anxious at his indifference. Mu Yaja, stop, Mu Yaja smirked. What should I do? I can't stop. Yun Shirshir struggled to turn around, but was trapped in his arms domineeringly. Mu Yaja licked her earlobe and whispered, let her go. Yun Shirshir, are you there? The person outside the door was a little impatient. Mu Yaja's flirtatious gaze became more dangerous as his eyes slowly narrowed. Yun Shirshir was scared witless. She hurriedly said loudly, I'm not free now. Yun Shirshir regretted speaking just now. Her voice was misty and trembling, full of suppressed lust. How embarrassing. Shirshir, your voice sounds weird. Are you not feeling well? Chapter 334. Mu Yaja gave a strange smile as his slender index finger pinched her sensitive spot. She let out a soft moan and hurriedly covered her mouth with her hand as she glared fiercely at him. Did this guy want to see her embarrass herself? Shirshir? What's wrong with you? The person outside pushed the door. Yun Shirshir's nerves were on the verge of breaking. Even her breathing became a little hurried. Answer her. Mu Yaja smiled evilly and the tip of his tongue traced the kiss mark on her neck that hadn't faded yet. That was the seal he had left on her body. Yun Shirshir didn't know what to say and was furious. This man was obviously trying to embarrass her. Under his attack, half of her mind was in a rational state, and the other half was on the verge of collapse. I'm fine. Your coat? I'll send it to you later. There was suddenly no sound outside the door. The long silence made her extremely nervous. However, the man found her nervous look interesting, so he didn't stop attacking her and kept messing around with her body. In the end, Yun Shirshir flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to stop this tense invasion. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain on her lips. Mu Yaja's handsome eyes suddenly opened and a trace of scarlet flashed across his eyes. When he realized that she had bitten his lips, the anger in his eyes disappeared in a moment. In the pain, his lips quickly became numb, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he deepened the kiss with the beautiful sweet taste. The blood on his lips couldn't stop flowing. The tip of his tongue outlined, like a bloodthirsty vampire, evil and charming. He passed the sweet and fishy taste into her mouth. He wanted to let her have a taste of it. In the lounge, there was endless romance. Yun Shirshir's tongue touched a trace of sweetness and a white light suddenly exploded in her mind. Mu Yaja continued kissing and plundering her passionately. However, the person under him gradually stopped responding. Mu Yaja slowly raised his head, only to see the person in his arms looking up at him with a pale face. Her eyes were fixed on his face. There were traces of blood on his lips. It was the blood from when she had bitten his lips. Coupled with her pale lips, it was strangely seductive. His eyes dimmed and he reached out to touch her lips, wiping away the blood on her lips. She opened her mouth and bit his finger. She left a row of deep teeth marks. Like an enraged cat, she bit fiercely without any mercy. Mu Yaja didn't move at all. He slowly got up and seemed to have lost interest. He casually took the suit jacket on the side, opened the door, and walked out. Outside the door, Jiang Yutong did not leave. Instead, she waited for Yun Shishir at the door. Instead, she bumped into him unexpectedly. Jiang Yutong was stunned. With her status, she naturally didn't know who he was. Her first impression was that this man was too handsome, and he was unusually young. He was tall and had an extraordinary aura. His handsome face was like that of a god. It was difficult to measure his handsomeness with words. Who was he? Why did he walk out of Yun Shishir's lounge? Jiang Yutong's sharp eyes noticed that there was a wound on his lips, and blood was oozing out. Chapter 335. Mu Yaja frowned slightly. Seeing her gaze on his lips, he subconsciously licked the blood stain with his tongue. Without a word, he turned around and left. Arrogant, cold, and extraordinarily handsome. Judging from his attire, he must be a famous person who was either rich or respectable. Jiang Yutong could not believe it. She had thought that such a man would only appear in her imagination. She did not expect to see him with her own eyes. Hence, she stood there in a daze for a long time. She felt like she was in a dream. But why did he walk out of Yun Shishir's lounge? Could it be that there was some unknown relationship between them? Jiang Yutong started to make wild guesses. Although she appeared to be amiable and friendly toward Yun Shishir on the surface, everyone had their own selfish motives, didn't they? Although Yun Shishir had not officially debuted, she was already very famous. Not to mention the newcomers, even the celebrities had a lot of doubts and suspicions about her. There were rumors that Yun Shishir was able to appear in Lin Fengtian's film without debuting because she had a sugar daddy behind her. Otherwise, how could a newbie with no fame like her appear in Lin Fengtian's film? That was not all. What right did she have to be invited to Huan Yu's annual cocktail party? Even Yang Mi and Tang Yu had to rely on their connections to get in. What right did she have? She was even Gu Xingza's female companion? She heard that Gu Xingza had personally invited her. Was that possible? Gu Xingza was famous in the industry for being arrogant. Would he personally invite a newbie with no fame to be his female companion? Was it because of her looks? However, in the entertainment industry, there were many talented and beautiful women. There was no lack of different styles. Some were sexy and hot, some were outstanding beauties, and some were pure and innocent. The competition was cruel and the battles were fierce. That was not all. If she made use of this movie's female lead and the cocktail party to make a name for herself, wouldn't it be easy for her to sign a contract and debut? With such excellent resources, who would believe that she did not have a sugar daddy behind her? However, Yun Shishir was completely wronged on this point. Lin Fengtian had personally chosen her to be the female lead because Yun Shishir's temperament matched his image of the female lead. Even the picky Gu Xingza thought that she was the best choice for the female lead. Contrary to what they had guessed, the investors had already decided on the female lead. However, Lin Fengtian was adamantly against it. He would rather not film the film than let the investors force a candidate into the role. However, there was a saying that people's gossip was a fearful thing. As a result, these presumptuous remarks had already spread in private. Jiang Yutong was a little skeptical at first. But now, she believed it all. She believed that Yun Shishir had a sugar daddy. Could it be that the man just now was her sugar daddy? But. A series of questions flashed through Jiang Yutong's mind. Why did she drop out of school and come to the capital in her teens? As a young girl with an acting dream, she had spent a few years to get to where she was today, step by step, from being naive at the beginning to having the opportunity to sign a contract. Why was it that someone was able to beat her to it, and even effortlessly obtain a better result than her? On what basis? Therefore, she was more or less jealous of her. But this was human nature. Chapter 336. Hence, when Yun Shishir walked out of the restroom with her coat, the way Jiang Yutong looked at her was different from usual. Yun Shishir bumped into her when she walked out of the restroom. She was startled by her sudden appearance. You, Shishir, why have you been in there for so long? What on earth are you doing? Why didn't you respond after knocking on the door for such a long time? Jiang Yutong came back to her senses and immediately cleaned up the messy emotions on her face. She walked in front of her with a smile and took the coat from her hand. I didn't do anything. She smiled, but she did not elaborate on the matter and simply brushed it off. She didn't know how long Jiang Yutong had been standing at the door, nor did she know how much she had heard of what had happened in the room. She only knew that she couldn't explain too much, otherwise, it would only make things worse. But I think I saw a man walking out of your restroom just now. Your door was locked from the inside. Is there something going on between you two? Jiang Yutong pretended to be very nosy and wanted to know more about it. Yun Shishir was a little anxious. She hated Mu Yaja's casual behavior. It was as if he was the supreme ruler, as if all living beings were his playthings and should be ruled by him. He suddenly appeared in her resting room and did not seem to be afraid of the media reporters who were lurking in Huanyu Tower to take photos. Saying strange things to her out of the blue that disturbed her mind, he suddenly wanted her. He wanted her all the time, regardless of the occasion. He didn't care about her feelings at all. Now, someone saw it and wanted her to explain. But how could she explain it? Seeing that she was silent, Jiang Yutong became more curious. It seemed that she wouldn't give up until she gave her a reasonable explanation. She was definitely going to pester her. But the interesting thing was she really her friend? They had known each other for less than 10 days. They were in the same training class. They had seen each other face to face and exchanged smiles occasionally. Was it necessary for her to explain so much to her? Jiang Yutong saw that she didn't speak and concluded that there must be something going on between the two of them. Wasn't that inevitable? That man must be one of Yun Shishir's financial backers. After thinking about it, she felt that it was very suspicious. Huanyu Tower's security system was in place. How could a random person sneak into Huanyu Tower? It was a leisurely stroll, as if he was taking a stroll in his own backyard, careless and unconcerned. There must be something fishy going on. This man was either a rich and powerful celebrity, or he was one of Huanyu's higher-ups. There were too many unspoken rules in this industry. The scandal of Tang Yu's sleeping scandal had caused an uproar among the public. They were shocked by the dark rules of the entertainment industry. But in Jiang Yutong's eyes, it was not surprising at all. He had been in this circle for a few years, so what kind of dark side had he not seen? No matter how talented or beautiful a newcomer was, it was impossible for her to become famous for no reason. This industry was all about background and resources. No matter how good her aptitude was, if she didn't have anyone to support her from behind, even if she wanted to become famous, it was just that she had nowhere to go. Chapter 337. There must be someone behind the scenes who pushed her to the top. If she wanted to figure it out, she had to build a good relationship with Yun Shishir first. Then she could get the man's identity and the ins and outs of the matter from her. How powerful was the person who could make a newcomer popular in such a short time? If it was possible, she might even be able to poach a man from Yun Shishir and get some resources from him. As for the hidden rules, if she could become popular overnight, she would be willing to do anything. After staying in this circle for a long time, her values were naturally not right. She could not be indifferent to the so-called innocents. After all, she was not young anymore. If she could not make a name for herself, she would never have another chance. Therefore, since she could not force her, she could only play the tender card. With a friendly smile on her face, she lowered her voice and asked, Shishir, the man just now, is he your boyfriend? That's not it. She vehemently denied, feeling baffled by his words. Wasn't Jiang Yutong being overly enthusiastic about her matters? What was the relationship between her and Mu Yaja? Was it her turn to ask? Thinking of this, Yun Shishir turned and walked to the training room. When Jiang Yutong saw this, she unwillingly followed behind her and said carefully, Sure, maybe you think that I'm the kind of person who can't keep secrets, but I've always treated you as a good friend. Among all the newcomers, you take care of me the best. We are friends, right? Yun Shishir slowed down her pace. Friends, except for Xiao Shui, she really had no friends. When she was in school, she was a little autistic. In school, girls always liked to gather in small groups. If she could not fit in the group, she would be isolated. What's more, when she was in school, her appearance gradually grew. She was fresh, pure, and beautiful. Not only in class, But also many seniors admired her very much. Among them, some of these seniors were the most handsome men in school. They were the Prince Charming in many girls' eyes. Therefore, the hatred was more obvious. Many boys were constantly pursuing her. Every morning when they went to class, their desks would be stuffed with a stack of envelopes. Some of these envelopes contained love letters that were full of sweet nothings, while others contained razor blades and threatening letters sent by some girls. Every time, she threw them away cleanly and didn't open a single one of them. She did not have the throbbing of a girl's youth at all. What she wanted was to get into a good university, then leave the family and be independent outside. Her behavior of throwing away the love letters in the eyes of outsiders was arrogant. Most of the boys in school were hot-blooded and cared about their faces. Many boys saw that the girl they passionately pursued threw away the love letters one drawer after drawer, and their admiration turned into anger out of shame. Therefore, not only did the girls give her the cold shoulder, but the boys also ostracized her, isolated her, teased her, and even went overboard. Nobody was willing to be friends with her. It seemed that she did not need a friend. Although she was alone, there was no betrayal, no framing, no trouble, which was very good. But there were many people who pointed at her back and called her a vixen. Li Qin also scolded her, Yun Na also scolded her, and her classmates also scolded her behind her back. She was very confused for a while. She did not know what she did wrong. Chapter 338. She wasn't stupid. She knew exactly what Jiang Yutong was thinking. Jiang Yutong was trying to get information out of her. She wasn't stupid. Why would she tell her? She might look weak, but she wasn't. She stood aloof from worldly affairs. She didn't like to play games, nor did she like to cater to others. If she could get along with someone, she would. If she couldn't, she would never open her heart to them. Sure, why aren't you saying anything? Are you worried that I'll spill the beans? Jiang Yutong patted her chest when she didn't respond. Hey, don't worry. I won't betray you. With that, Jiang Yutong stood in front of her and made a solemn vow. I swear that if I can't keep your secret, I'll be struck by lightning. It was a vow. She wasn't worried about retribution at all. Yun Shirshir looked at her deeply. She suddenly felt a little tired. Why should I tell you about my relationship with him? Yun Shirshir was confused. Will it help you in any way? Jiang Yutong paused for a moment and quickly explained, No, I didn't. I'm just worried about you. What are you worried about? Yun Shirshir was even more curious. Jiang Yutong touched the back of her head and pretended to be worried. Shirshir, you've signed a contract with Huanyu, right? Yes. She had signed a contract. But then? Have you read the terms and conditions of the contract? She replied, Yes, I saw it clearly. Then you should know that it's a breach of contract if you're dating in private. Jiang Yutong said to her in a serious tone. She seemed to be concerned, but in fact, she was trying to scare her. Yun Shirshir pretended to be deep in thought. In fact, she was secretly guessing what Jiang Yutong was planning. I heard that it's a serious breach of contract. Not only will you be banned by Huanyu, but you'll also face an astronomical sum of money. You won't be able to pay it back even if you spend your whole life. Jiang Yutong said kindly. Yun Shirshir said calmly, It's okay. He's not my boyfriend. Even if it was, so what? The entire Huanyu belonged to Mu Yaja. However, when Yun Shirshir thought about how Mu Yaja had asked her for a sky-high penalty for breaching the contract, she shuddered. This man seemed to be capable of doing such a thing. If she made him unhappy, he didn't even need to do it himself. He could easily crush her with a single finger. Seeing her suddenly fall silent, he coldly denied it. His tone was decisive and straightforward, without even a trace of hesitation. His face was calm and composed, without any unnaturalness or guilt. It didn't look like he was lying at all. Is he really not her boyfriend? Jiang Yutong thought to herself, That's right. If such a handsome man is my sugar daddy, he's so handsome, rich, and elegant. He's like a model from an idol drama. Many people will be jealous of me if I tell them. Jiang Yutong rolled her eyes. Suddenly, she lowered her voice and whispered carefully in her ear, Shirshir, that man can't be the mysterious sugar daddy behind you, right? As soon as she finished speaking, Yun Shirshir raised her head abruptly. Her pair of clear eyes stared fixedly at her as her brows furrowed slightly. She seemed to have seen through Jiang Yutong's intentions. Chapter 339. Jiang Yutong's heart skipped a beat when she saw her reaction. She covered her mouth in shock. She was right. She murmured in disbelief, "It can't be true, right?" As she spoke, she tugged at Yun Shirshir's sleeve, her eyes burning with excitement. "Shirshir, I heard from them that the reason why you can get so many resources before your debut is because you have a big sugar daddy supporting you. Are those rumors true?" Yun Shirshir said coldly. "Oh, then what's your relationship with me? I asked you a question but you didn't answer me. Do you even consider me as your friend?" Jiang Yutong frowned and scolded her impatiently when she saw that she had sealed her mouth so tightly. Yun Shirshir's lips curled up coldly as she retorted, "Ridiculous. When did we become friends? Why don't I know about it?" Jiang Yutong was stunned by her cold question. What? She seemed to be a little lonely because of Yun Shirshir's indifference. She lowered her eyes and sighed absent-mindedly. "I thought we were friends," she murmured, looking aggrieved and sad. She said bitterly, "You're so nice to me. I thought you should treat me as a friend." Yun Shirshir was so angry that she laughed. "You thought? Your so-called thought is just your wishful thinking." Jiang Yutong was irritated by her straightforward words. "Yun Shirshir, what do you mean? You make it sound like I'm coveting something from you. Why do you have to be so sarcastic? You've really hurt my heart." Yun Shirshir's face curled into a sneer as her lips curled into a mocking smile. "Jiang Yutong, what answer do you want from me?" Jiang Yutong stared at her blankly. She couldn't help but feel that Yun Shirshir was so aggressive. "What? I'm asking you now. Why are you silent again?" Yun Shirshir's lips curled into a smile. "Let me ask for you then. You want to ask me, I'm just a newcomer, how can I be in Director Lin's film?" Jiang Yutong's eyes changed. She nodded silently. Suddenly she realized something and shook her head. "That's not what I meant." Yun Shirshir smirked and took a step closer to her. "Then what do you mean? On what basis can I attend Huan Yu's annual cocktail party? What right do I have to be Heavenly King Gu's female companion? What right do I have to sign a contract with Huan Yu when I just debuted? Is it related to the man you saw just now? Isn't that what you want to ask?" Yun Shirshir was 1.7 meters tall, while Jiang Yutong was only 1.6 meters tall. The difference in height between them was destined to make Yun Shirshir look down on her. Jiang Yutong stared at her, dumbfounded. She clenched her fists tightly and wanted to say something, but she stopped herself. That was what she wanted to ask, but she had asked it so vaguely. She thought that Yun Shirshir, who looked dull on the surface, would not be shrewd. She did not expect her to see through her thoughts at a glance. Chapter 340. Behind her, Jiang Yutong froze on the spot with a pale face. Her eyes were filled with hatred. She was also embarrassed. Women were creatures that held grudges. Jiang Yutong swore to herself that she would return the humiliation she suffered in front of Yun Shirshir today 100-fold. However, she was a woman of her word. Therefore, when Yun Shirshir stepped into the classroom the next day, she was acutely aware of the crowd's judging, speculating, and questioning gazes landing on her. They were as sharp as arrows, making her feel uncomfortable as if she was being pricked by needles. She raised her head and vaguely saw Jiang Yutong looking at her with a deep expression. She was sitting in the corner, staring at her with a gloomy expression, as if she was very appreciative of her current awkward situation. The murmurs made Yun Shirshir feel as if she had returned to her days as a student. The moment she stepped into the classroom, she was greeted with the same piercing gazes and scrutiny. From head to toe, from the outside to the inside, it was as if they wanted to dig out every corner of her body. Humans were selfish by nature. When they met something better than themselves, they would be envious, jealous, and even want to destroy it. Jiang Yutong was such a woman. Yun Shirshir, on the other hand, preferred peace. She was not overly greedy or ambitious. Most of the time, she just wanted to enjoy the world in peace. She wanted to live and survive peacefully. This kind of peace had accompanied her for almost her entire life. No matter what kind of slander or predicament she faced, she could suppress herself and get through it calmly. This kind of peace might seem lonely or even cold in the eyes of outsiders. However, it was as if her life was destined to be full of misfortune. It was destined to not be peaceful. Yun Shirshir pretended to be calm. She hugged her textbook and sat down in her seat. But her carefree attitude caused even more whispered discussions to arise. Buzzing, 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 it was as if innumerable flies were surrounding her and circling around her, disturbing her to the point that her mind was in turmoil. She looked up slightly and glanced at the indifferent faces following the murmurs. Seeing this, those people quickly lowered their heads and pursed their lips. They felt guilty and did not say a word. However, when Yun Shirshir lowered her head, the murmurs started again, making her feel extremely anxious. This was terrible. There was no need to think about it. Who was the culprit behind this sudden disturbance? Jiang Yutong must have spread some kind of rumor in the classroom to attract those suspicious gazes. The faces of those who were whispering to each other in private gradually became distorted and hideous in her eyes. They were incomparably hideous and ugly. She could no longer pretend to be calm. She pushed the table angrily and stood up, shouting, "Are you done?" Everyone was stunned. No one expected Yun Shirshir, who was usually quiet and even timid, to the point that she was actually angry. For a moment, it was as if the air had frozen. Until Jiang Yutong sneered, "No one is talking about you. What are you thinking?" "You're deaf, but I'm not." Yun Shirshir retorted with a sneer. Jiang Yutong choked for a moment and was speechless. People who looked easy to bully were not easy to bully. Chapter 341. Suddenly, a voice came from the classroom. "You're the only one who's allowed to do it, but we're not allowed to talk about it?" "Who's talking?" Yun Shirshir's cold gaze swept over. "If you're talking to me, please stand up first and let me see who you are. This is the basic courtesy between people. Who's afraid of you? Do you think you're so great just because you have a sugar daddy to rely on?" In the second row, a pretty girl with a ponytail stood up unhappily. "We're talking about you, so what?" Yun Shirshir's eyes narrowed as her lips curled into a cold smirk. Everyone present shuddered inexplicably at this sight. "What are you talking about?" Her voice was very soft and light, but it revealed a sense of coldness. This coldness was not indifferent on the surface, but it was bone-chilling. That ponytailed girl was also a little frightened by her tone and shrunk her shoulders slightly. But when she thought of the dozens of people in the training class who were on the same side as her, she regained some courage and said, "We're talking about how unclean you are and how you use dirty and despicable methods." Yun Shirshir's expression did not change. For example? Do you still need to ask me about what you've done?" That girl sneered and said, "Yesterday, someone saw a man walking out of your lounge. You're the only one using that lounge, and I don't know who gave you the privilege. That man must be your sugar daddy behind the scenes. I say, although you're a newbie, you have so many resources. You obviously relied on the unspoken rules to get to your position." Her words were laced with sticks and spears, aggressive. Yun Shirshir said indifferently, "A woman's jealousy is really scary." "What did you say?" "I'm jealous of you." That girl slammed the table in exasperation and said angrily, "Let me tell you, I've reached this step by relying on myself. Unlike some people who don't walk on the bright path and choose to follow the dirty, unspoken rules. Yun Shirshir, don't let me get hold of any evidence or I'll expose you." In a moment of impulse, she said these words. After saying it, that girl suddenly regretted it. Looking at Yun Shirshir's cold and disdainful eyes again, it was as if she was mocking her ignorance and childishness. "Do you think everyone is the same as you? What do you mean? Are you as pretty as me? Do you have my acting skills? Do you have my aptitude? Only those who aren't capable need to rely on the unspoken rules. But I don't need to." Suddenly, a few mocking laughter could be heard in the classroom. The girl was so embarrassed that her face flushed red. She pushed her desk away and quickly walked up to Yun Shirshir. Pointing at her, she said, "What's the point of only knowing how to sow discord here? Are you saying that I'm not as pretty as you? Do you with your acting skills? Do I have your aptitude? Where do you? I'm Dashi, she said coldly. However, there was no rebuttal in the classroom. Yun Yun's Shirshir in terms of aptitude, no one in the class could compare to Yun Shirshir. There was no room for rebuttal. Bitch! That girl flew into a rage out of humiliation and rushed towards Yun Shirshir's face with threatening gestures. Chapter 342. Yun Shirshir reached out and gently wiped the mark on her neck. With a sharp glint in her eyes, she casually picked up a heavy pencil case from the side and smashed it at her face. The pencil case was made of iron. When it hit the girl's forehead, it broke a layer of skin and blood oozed out. No one in the training class expected the situation to go out of control. They were all stunned. The ponytailed girl clutched her forehead in pain and retreated a few steps in a sorry state. Looking at the bloodstain on her hand, her face flushed red in an instant. Feeling wronged and unbearable, her eyes reddened. Losing her rationality, she picked up a stool from the side and hurled it at Yun Shirshir. There were a few exclamations and attempts to dissuade her. However, her movements were too fast. There was no time to stop her. In the blink of an eye, the stool hit Yun Shirshir. Yun Shirshir couldn't dodge in time and was hit by the stool. She staggered and fell to the ground. At the same time, a thunderous roar came from the door. What are you doing? Everyone looked over and saw the deputy artistic director, Jing Yun, standing at the door angrily. His eyes were fixed on the stool in the ponytailed girl's hand. The veins on his forehead were bulging. What surprised everyone even more was that Huanyu Entertainment's top manager, Qin Zhou, was standing behind him. Beside him was the famous Heavenly King, Gu Xingze. The newcomer training class would usually invite famous artists to teach the newcomers. In the past, Gu Xingze never participated in the newcomer training class. Even when Ji Yanluo personally invited him, Gu Xingze dismissed him with a look of disinterest. This time, he didn't know what possessed him, but he actually said that he wanted to come with Qin Zhou to the newcomer training class. Qin Zhou was one of the instructors of the newcomer training class. He cursed in his heart. This guy just came back from Milan Fashion Week. When he got off the plane, he found out that Yun Shirshir was in the newcomer training class. He took the initiative to come and listen to how he teaches the newcomers. Listen to his lecture? Who are you kidding? He's obviously worried about a certain woman. However, before they could enter the classroom, they heard the commotion from afar and hurried over. Obviously, they had clearly seen the scene in the classroom just now. The ponytailed girl didn't expect them to suddenly appear. She only cursed in her heart. She was so impulsive that she forgot where she was. She hurriedly put down the weapon in her hand and stood there helplessly. Her face was in a daze, and she didn't dare to believe what she had done when she lost her mind. What are you doing? Zheng Yun stepped forward, and just as he was about to lash out, a light breeze blew past him. When everyone came back to their senses, they saw that Gu Xingze had actually walked to Yun Shirshir's side with a nervous expression. He bent down slightly and crouched down, holding up her wrist with some heartache. Earlier, when that young lady had swung the stool towards her, she had instinctively stretched out her arm to block it. On her pure white arm, a thick bruise had instantly appeared. In Gu Xingze's eyes, he couldn't hide the pain in his heart. He carefully touched the wound, causing Yun Shirshir to frown. Does it hurt? He asked nervously. Yun Shirshir shook her head and gritted her teeth. It doesn't hurt. You're still saying it doesn't hurt? Gu Xingze knew her well. No matter how painful it was, she would try her best to endure it. Seeing the cold sweat on her forehead oozing uncontrollably, Gu Xingze suddenly raised his head. A dangerous glint flashed across his cold eyes. Who hurt you? There was a strange silence in the classroom. The dead silence was suffocating. Chapter 343. Who hurt her? He was at the back of the group, so he did not see what happened just now. When he stood at the door, Yun Shirshir had already fallen to the ground. Beside her, a ponytailed girl was holding a stool in her hand, standing there in a daze. There was a strange silence in the classroom. Everyone was frozen in place, and no one dared to make a sound. This was the first time they saw Gu Xingze's real face. In the past, they mostly saw the image of the Heavenly King on the television screen. Sometimes he was arrogant, sometimes he was cold, and sometimes he was gentle. This was everyone's first time seeing Gu Xingzi's real face. Compared to his image on the screen, he was more noble and handsome, as if he was born naturally. However, at this moment, his body exuded a bone-chilling coldness. His eyes were cold and terrifying. It was as if he could kill someone with a single glance. No one dared to move or even make a sound. Even the sound of their breathing was carried out quietly, for fear of angering the man in front of them. Who hurt her? Gu Xingzi questioned her coldly again. His powerful voice reverberated in the huge classroom, numbing everyone's nerves. Someone pointed weakly at the ponytailed girl standing by the podium and whispered, It's Lu Yi. Whoosh, everyone's gaze immediately fell on Lu Yi's body. Lu Yi was so shocked that she took a step back. Her back was against the blackboard, and she could not avoid it for a moment. Her shoulders trembled, and she finally mustered up the courage to argue, It's not me, it's Yun Shirshir, she was the one who attacked me first. As she spoke, as if she was grasping at a thin life-saving straw, she kept showing Gu Xingzi the wound on her forehead that was still bleeding. She said pitifully, Look, she hit me and left this. She hit me first, so I hit her back. I was just defending myself. No one spoke and no one testified. At this moment, everyone remained silent, and no one dared to speak. In fact, no one saw that it was Yun Shirshir who made the first move. Instead, it was Lu Yi who made the first move and hurt Yun Shirshir. Then Yun Shirshir fought back. Every training room was equipped with surveillance cameras. Once they checked the records, the truth would be revealed. Therefore, no one dared to get involved in this mess. Jiang Yutong was also stunned, completely dumbfounded. Like many young girls, she had a Prince Charming in her heart. Gu Xingzi had been in the entertainment industry for many years. With his handsome appearance and solid acting skills, he had captured a considerable number of fans, and Jiang Yutong was one of them. She deeply admired Gu Xingzi. He was the only national idol in her heart. Although there were many new stars in the entertainment industry, no one could replace Gu Xingzi's position. However, at this moment, she saw the man of her dreams hugging Yun Shirshir's shoulders lovingly. His eyes were filled with tenderness as he inquired about her well-being. The doting look in his eyes could hardly be concealed as it overflowed like a river. She stared at him, dumbfounded. Her heart was filled with mixed feelings. Bitterness, jealousy, and most of all, jealousy. Jealousy? How could she not be jealous? If Gu Xingzi could speak to her gently, she would be so happy that she would go crazy. But the idol in her heart was holding another woman, and this woman was the one she hated the most. Chapter 344. Why was it Yun Shirshir? She wished that the person lying in his arms right now was her, not Yun Shirshir, who had used underhanded means to climb up the social ladder. Gu Xingzi raised his head coldly and glared at Lu Yi expressionlessly. He suddenly said coldly, Huanyu Entertainment will not sign a contract with a trainee who causes trouble. Everyone was in an uproar as soon as he finished speaking. Gu Xingzi's short sentence completely cut off Lu Yi's path to stardom. Gu Xingzi was one of the major shareholders of Huanyu Entertainment. He held 1/5 of Huanyu's shares, so his orders were naturally powerful. It was not inferior to a ban order. This huge Huanyu corporation could be considered half of his world. If he wanted to expel a trainee, it was just a matter of moving his mouth. It was not difficult. However, Lu Yi had spent a lot of effort to get into Huanyu's training class. This opportunity was very precious. If she missed it, there would not be a second time. If she could successfully graduate from the training class, she would be able to debut. Debut, how many people dreamed of it? But he had removed her from the class with a simple sentence. This meant that she would be permanently frozen in Huanyu. That was too cruel. Yun Shirshir's eyes flashed slightly. Her gaze fell on the helpless Lu Yi, but she did not say anything. Lu Yi opened her mouth in shock. Her eyes were filled with fear and shock. What do you mean? Please get out. You have lost the right to sign a contract and debut. Gu Xingzi's thin lips parted slightly. His tone was frosty. Everyone was stunned, including Jiang Yutong. She was Gu Xingzi's hardcore fan, so she knew that as a shareholder of Huanyu he had a lot of power in his hands. But she did not expect that he would ban someone for Yun Shirshir. The training class was silent for a long time. Gu Xingze didn't say anything else. He bent down and carefully pulled Yun Shishir into his arms, lifting her up easily. His every movement was so careful, as if he was afraid of hurting her, as if he was treating an extremely fragile treasure. Louis said unwillingly, "Heavenly King Gu, I'm your fan. In my heart, only a noble and elegant woman is worthy of your status. This woman is not worthy of you." Gu Xingze ignored her indifferently and was about to leave the classroom with Yun Shishir in his arms. Lu Yi rushed forward and grabbed his arm. "Don't you know? She relied on the unspoken rules to get to her position." "Let go," he warned in a cold voice. His cold gaze was like a sharp sword, shooting at the back of her hand. Lu Yi was frightened by his gaze and took a step back. However, she finally gathered her courage and cried, "Since you want to fire me, then please give me a satisfactory explanation." Yun Shishir is also a student of the training class. She has already signed a contract with Huanyu. I remember that the contract states very clearly. During the contract, she can't be in a relationship. Otherwise, it's a breach of contract. Yesterday, someone saw a man entering and leaving her lounge. She obviously relied on dirty means to get to her position. Why does she have special treatment? Shut up. Lu Yi did not care about his warning. If she lost the right to sign a contract, Yun Shishir would not have an easy time either. Chapter 345. This has nothing to do with you. Gu Xingze could not be bothered to listen to her explanation and left with Yun Shishir in his arms. Qin Zhou's expression changed slightly when he saw Gu Xingze leave. He instructed Zheng Yun to tidy up the situation and left in a hurry. Gu Xingze brought Yun Shishir to his studio on the 30th floor of Huanyu Tower. Gu Xingze's studio occupied a total of 500 square meters of floor space. The entire floor was his world. When the elevator door opened, a simple yet luxurious living room came into view. The private doctor was already waiting in the living room. Qin Zhou had hurriedly contacted the private doctor in Huanyu Tower just now. Gu Xingze placed Yun Shishir on the single bed behind the screen and turned around. "Come and take a look at her." The doctor observed Gu Xingze's expression and saw how nervous he was. He knew how important this woman was to him, so he did not dare to neglect her. Yun Shishir allowed the private doctor to examine her and concluded that it was just a light bruise. After some simple treatment, she would recover in a few days. Gu Xingze's stiff and cold expression finally relaxed. "Thank you, Gu Xingze," Yun Shishir said gratefully from the bottom of her heart. She did not mention a word about what happened in the classroom just now. Qin Zhou saw that Yun Shishir was fine. He was a discerning person, so he quickly left with the doctor. Bang! The elevator door closed and the living room fell silent. Gu Xingze slowly sat on the side of the bed and looked up at her. He asked softly, "Does it hurt?" His expression was careful, as if she was a precious and fragile object in his eyes. If he did not take good care of her, she would break easily. Yun Shishir shook her head. "It doesn't hurt anymore. You're putting on a brave front." Gu Xingze lowered his eyes and looked a little helpless. "I used my hand to block it. I'm not injured anywhere else. It's just a light bruise on my arm. It will be fine after some time," said Yun Shishir. After she finished speaking, there was a long silence. It was so quiet that it felt a little awkward. Both of them had their own thoughts and did not speak to each other. Just as he was about to speak, Qin Zhou suddenly called. He immediately looked a little impatient. He picked up the phone and said coldly, "You better have something urgent." Qin Zhou's lips twitched. "It's like this. Ji Lin wants to meet you for dinner. Bring Yun Shishir." "I'm not going. Her arm was injured. How could she go?" "It's about the movie. Let's meet another day." "The producers and investors are all there. Your brother is there too." "Gu, could it be because of Yang Shouqing?" Gu Xingze was slightly stunned. He was absent-minded for a moment. Then he hung up the phone and stood up. "You rest here first." Yun Shishir quickly stood up as well. "It's okay. I can go with you." Her hearing was very good. Gu Xingze did not avoid her when he answered the phone. She could vaguely hear that Qin Zhou wanted her to go too. Gu Xingze looked at her helplessly. His eyes were filled with tenderness and heartache. Be a good girl. Although it was a short word, his face was overflowing with love and affection. It made it impossible for her to resist. Gu Jinglian was an extremely dangerous person. He did not want Yun Shishir to appear in an event where he was present. Yun Shishir compromised. Okay. Gu Xingze was relieved. However, just as he was about to turn and leave, Yun Shishir quickly followed him and gently tugged at the corner of his shirt. I'd better go with you. What if it's something important? Gu Xingze pondered for a moment and finally nodded. Okay, then you listen to my arrangements. Chapter 346. At night, the wind was bone-chilling. The location of the appointment was Palace, Private Clubhouse. Palace, Private Clubhouse, was located in the bustling Longchuan Manor. The scenery was unique and it was far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was a rare and peaceful place. 100 years ago, this place was densely packed with aristocratic mansions. The Gu family, which had 100 years of history, was also from an aristocratic family. With the passing of time, this piece of land had become the most desired and unattainable place for the common people in the capital. However, on this piece of land where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold, the Gu family's old mansion occupied a considerable amount of land. The Gu family was the #1 aristocratic family in the underworld and was ranked first among the 3 major families in the capital. Even now, after 100 years of prosperity and decline, the Gu family was still a powerful family in the underworld. The Gu clan was an existence that controlled half of the entire underworld. The other clans were wary of them, and they had once enjoyed a period of glory. 15 years ago, there was an internal strife within the Gu family. In order to fight for the position of the head of the family, the direct descendants and the collateral descendants fought until their heads were broken and blood was spilled. Because of this, the Gu family declined for a period of time. Because of this, the Gu family had once fallen apart in 10 years. The bloodline of the Gu family was extremely weak. In the early years, the Gu family's position was unstable and the 2 children of the head of the Gu family, Gu Lianqing, were assassinated. Later on, he had a son. Other than Gu Jinglian, the eldest son, Gu Lianqing also had a concubine son, Gu Xingze. A concubine's son. The so-called concubine's son was Gu Lianqing's illegitimate son. Gu Jinglian was the son of Gu Lianqing's first wife and was the rightful successor. However, Gu Jinglian's personality had always been arrogant. He was young and arrogant and was a typical hedonistic second generation. Although Gu Xingze was younger than Gu Jinglian by 5 years, he was deeply loved by Gu Lianqing. However, in the 100 years of the Gu family's history, there had never been a concubine's son who became the head of the family. Even if Gu Lianqing wanted to help him become the head of the family, the elders of the Gu family would probably oppose it. To the century-old underworld families, the distinction between direct descendants and concubines was very particular. The son of a concubine was a son of a concubine. He could not see the light of day. In the car, Gu Xingze stared coldly at the passing scenery outside the window. His identity had always been a shady one. He had never even stepped into the Gu family with a proper identity. When Gu Lianqing passed away more than a decade ago, Gu Xingze was only 10 years old. Gu Jinglian called him to his side and gave him a bank card and a plane ticket to a foreign country. This was the first time the 2 brothers had met, but it was also a farewell. At that time, Gu Jinglian had already successfully inherited the position of the head of the Gu family. Naturally, he could not tolerate any provocation. Gu Jinglian stood in the study and spoke to him briefly and straightforwardly. You don't have to work so hard in school. You don't have to work too hard to further your studies abroad. As the bastard son of the Gu family, you don't need to pursue any dreams at all. You only need to know how to squander and enjoy life. After all, I will give you an inexhaustible wealth in this lifetime. Gu Jinglian's evil face was full of mockery. I should have gotten rid of you, but my father left a will before he died. For his sake, sending you abroad is my last mercy. However, you have to remember that the position of the head of the Gu family belongs to me in the end. His words were cold and explicit. If it were not for Gu Lianqing's will before he died, Gu Jinglian would not have tolerated his existence. Going abroad was just another way for him to live. It was not until 10 years ago that he was pardoned and regained the right to set foot on this land. Chapter 347. The car slowly stopped at the private clubhouse. After settling Yun Shishir in the hall, Gu Xingze hurried to the VIP room. Yun Shishir planned to wait for him in the hall. She waited for a long time. Not long after, Li Lan walked in with a briefcase. As soon as she walked into the hall, she caught a glimpse of a beautiful figure sitting alone in the corner. She couldn't help but take a second look. She was surprised to find that it was Yun Shishir, so she walked over with a smile. Yun Shishir was sitting quietly on the sofa, reading a magazine in her hand. From afar, her slender figure looked so thin, but under the light, there was an indescribable tranquility and beauty. Li Lan was a little surprised to see her here. She sighed inwardly again and walked to the sofa. Li Lan sat down beside her and gently nudged her. Perhaps the movement was too abrupt, but she, who was immersed in her book, was a little startled. Her shoulders couldn't help but tremble, and she came back to her senses. She looked up and saw that it was Li Lan. Her eyes couldn't help but be a little confused. Li Lan smiled and asked, "Why are you here?" Yun Shishir looked at her in confusion and didn't react. "Why are you here?" "I just finished work and came over for dinner. What about you?" Yun Shishir was stunned. She was a little absent-minded for a moment. She turned to look out of the window and realized that it was already dark. She also realized that her empty stomach was a little hungry. She realized that she hadn't eaten for the whole day. Thinking of this, her stomach let out a painful groan. Yun Shishir felt embarrassed. Li Lan heard it and smiled. "Are you hungry? Let's have dinner together." She nodded slowly. Suddenly, she thought of something. Where's Muyaja? Is he busy?" "Probably." "The CEO's schedule is always unpredictable." "I'm not sure." Li Lan paused and said, "Why are you looking for him?" Yun Shishir suddenly remembered that Muyaja left without saying goodbye yesterday. She was a little angry, so she shook her head calmly. Suddenly, she forced a smile and said, "I'm hungry. I want to eat something." It seemed that she was so hungry that her stomach growled as soon as she finished speaking. She hurriedly covered her stomach, feeling a little embarrassed. Li Lan, who was sharp enough to notice this, laughed. "Looks like you're really starving." Yun Shishir's cheeks were a little red. She couldn't help but feel aggrieved. Why was Gu Xingze was gone for so long? She hadn't eaten for a day. Li Lan smiled and asked, "Then what do you want to eat? I'll take you to eat." As she said that, she didn't forget to add, "Don't worry, whatever you want to eat, we have it all. And I'll definitely satisfy you." The CEO had repeatedly ordered her to do whatever she wanted, no matter how big or small. Naturally, Muyaja had specially instructed her to do so. Yun Shishir suddenly remembered that she had been thinking about Chinese food. Usually, she was so busy that Yu was in charge of all 3 meals a day. Now that he wasn't at home, she actually missed his cooking. Hence, she missed it very much. Thinking of this, she moved her lips and said greedily, "I want to eat Chinese food." Li Lan smiled. Of course, she could satisfy such a small request. Chapter 348. Yun Shishir sent a text message to Gu Xingze and left with Li Lan. The palace was a high-end place for dining, leisure, and entertainment. It had a KTV, a bar, a gym, and a cafe. Whether it was working or holding a meeting, all kinds of food, drink, and entertainment could be done here. The Chinese restaurant at the palace was very famous. The decoration was elegant, and the signboard was naturally linked to the restaurant's reputation. On average, even if there were only 2 or 3 dishes, it would cost a few hundred to 1,000 yuan. Even so, it was still very popular. Therefore, if one did not make a reservation, it would be very difficult to get a seat. Moreover, it was the peak period for dining, and the flow of customers was fierce. However, for Li Lan, making a reservation was a matter of course. After making an appointment, the store manager specially arranged a small private room with an elegant environment for them. The elegant lighting, glass windows, and bead curtains gave the room a very classical charm. Yun Shishir did not have a big appetite, but now she was extremely hungry. Looking at the delicious dishes on the menu, she felt even more hungry just by looking at the tempting appearance. The hungrier she was, the more reckless she was. She wanted to eat everything she saw. In the end, she unknowingly ordered a table full of dishes. Looking at the delicious dishes presented one after another, Yun Shirshir pinched her chopsticks and felt a little guilty. Earlier, she glanced at the prices. Just one dish was around a few hundred yuan. With so many dishes, it would be impossible to fill the table without a few thousand yuan. Li Lan was also a little surprised. She looked at the table full of dishes in a daze. Her hand holding the chopsticks was a little stiff. She laughed and asked, "Are you really that hungry?" Yun Shirshir was also a little distressed. Li Lan had eaten some snacks before work, so she did not feel very hungry. Moreover, she did not have a greedy appetite. After a few bites, she felt full and began to put food on Li Lan's plate. Yun Shirshir ate with relish. This Chinese restaurant was indeed worthy of being its #1 signature. The exquisite dishes were indeed delicious, making one greedy for more. Moreover, she was indeed hungry. Now that she was in front of Li Lan, she did not care about her reserved image. She was very focused on eating. Before she knew it, more than half of the food on the table was gone. Li Lan just looked at her like this. Just looking at her like this was pleasing to the eye. This was probably what they meant by a feast for the eyes. No matter what a beautiful person did, it was a kind of pleasure to watch them. Before the soup was served, she raised her head and put down her chopsticks. The tip of her pink tongue gently curled the corners of her lips, as if she had not had enough, but also seemed to be satisfied. There was a kind of cute naivety in her eyes. Li Lan couldn't help but smile. She handed over the handkerchief and asked softly, "Are you full?" Yun Shirshir nodded and took the handkerchief from her. She carefully wiped her mouth and subconsciously touched her slightly bulging belly. It was no wonder that the cost of food here was so high. The food was indeed delicious. If her appetite was big enough, she was confident that she could finish a whole table. She greedily glanced at the silver fish soup that the waiter had served again. She was a little reluctant to part with it, but she really couldn't eat any more. She helplessly sighed, raised her head, and asked softly, "Can I take all of this away?" "Of course, as long as you want." Li Lan said again, "If you like the taste of this restaurant, I'll bring you here next time." Chapter 349. Only then did Yun Shirshir reveal a satisfied smile. "It's getting late. Shirshir, let's go back." Yun Shirshir didn't show any disgust when Li Lan addressed her intimately. In her heart, she already had a good impression of Li Lan. Hence, she didn't reject Li Lan's affectionate nickname for her. She nodded, stood up, and followed Li Lan out. Just as they walked out of the private room, they bumped into a well-dressed middle-aged man in the corridor. Li Lan's eyes were sharp. She recognized him at a glance. Out of courtesy, she quickly greeted him with a smile. "Isn't this Mr. Qian? What a coincidence to meet you here." This middle-aged man was none other than Qian Xiaohua, the investor who was working with Huanyu Entertainment this time. It was also him who had invested heavily in Huanyu's next movie. He was also a famous big boss in Beijing. Hence, out of courtesy, she took the initiative to greet him. Qian Xiaohua also recognized her. He laughed and said, "Assistant Li? Nice to meet you. I didn't expect to meet you here. Why, aren't you with your Mr. Mu?" Li Lan reached out and shook his hand. She was about to answer. However, she saw the man's gaze turn and look straight at Yun Shirshir, who was standing behind her with an expressionless face. Qian Xiaohua's eyes widened slightly. There was surprise in his eyes, but more than that, there was a sigh of admiration. This girl was really beautiful. At first glance, she was already a celestial being. Her existence even brought light to this dimly lit corridor. Perhaps his gaze was too intense, or perhaps it was his gaze that was unique and invasive. Yun Shirshir came back to her senses and followed his gaze. Instantly, she felt a little uncomfortable from the piercing gaze and unconsciously hid behind Li Lan. However, her dodging action, in his eyes, suddenly became a different kind of feeling. She seemed to be shy. It was no wonder that she would be shy. Regardless of whether it was her dressing or her mannerisms, She looked very young and inexperienced. Putting aside her innocent tone, just her tender and beautiful little face was enough to make his heart itch. This girl was somewhat to his liking. It wasn't as if Qian Xiaohua had never played with women before. He was the pride of the business world and an investor in the entertainment industry. He had been in the industry for many years and could be said to have traveled among the flowers. With his successful status, he would play with women very fiercely. It wasn't that he hadn't played with innocent girls and schoolgirls before. He had played with plenty of them. But in this era of material desires, how could there be true innocence? They were all pretentious and delicate in order to become famous. At first, he felt that they were a little interesting and charming, but after a long time, most of them were exactly the same. It was inevitable that he would find them boring and annoying. Thus, as he sized her up, his gaze became even more indifferent and deep. He was like a hunter that had locked onto his target, and his eyes were filled with ambition and possessiveness. Li Lan looked at his bright eyes, and the smile on his lips stiffened little by little. At the same time, he felt a little embarrassed. Chapter 350. At that moment, how could she not know what Qian Xiaohua was thinking? That look in his eyes, that undisguised desire to plunder on his face, all showed that this man was scheming something in his heart. Li Lan secretly thought that this man must have taken a fancy to the little girl behind her at first glance. According to the past rules, if she were to bring an artist out and encounter such a situation, she would definitely promote it to Qian Xiaohua. After all, it was a great honor for an artist in her company to be fancied by this man. To be able to climb to a high branch overnight, like a sparrow flying to a branch to become a phoenix, that was naturally a great thing. Who would reject it? Of course, those girls who stepped into this circle for fame and fortune would be extremely happy. In the vanity market, sending women to those big bosses for entertainment could be considered an unspoken rule. However, now his target was Yun Shishir, and this was not allowed. Thus, she subconsciously stood in front of Yun Shishir, carefully protecting her, and at the same time blocking Qian Xiaohua's line of sight. This man then came back to his senses, still absent-mindedly glancing behind her from time to time, with a deep smile on his face. "Mr. Qian, why are you staring at her like that? Don't scare her." Li Lan smiled and said half-jokingly. Before becoming Mu Yaja's assistant, she was born as a manager of the public relations department. In terms of communication, dealing with and negotiating with some clients was naturally easy and handy. In terms of speaking, she was especially good. Just this funny sentence alone was enough to slightly calm the somewhat stiff atmosphere. Qian Xiaohua was also considered an experienced businessman. He had been at the wine table for many years, saying one thing in front of others and another behind others. In his heart, he had lived half his life and never taken off the mask on his face. Naturally, his ability to speak and read people's expressions was also top-notch. He could also see that this Li Lan seemed to have the intention of protecting her. Thinking about it, this girl's identity was not ordinary? Could it be that she was the daughter of some family? A socialite from the upper class? However, it did not look like it. It was not because of anything else. It was just that this girl did not have the arrogance and brashness that people in this circle should have. Instead, she had an air of arrogance about her. However, this arrogance was the kind that was ingrained in his bones. He was stubborn and determined. Moreover, the clothes she was wearing did not look like those of an aristocratic family's daughter. They were all simple designs. One had to know that all socialites from aristocratic families dressed extravagantly. Therefore, he rejected this idea. Since he didn't have any background, there was nothing to worry about. He had taken a fancy to this girl. "This girl is so pretty," Qian Xiaohua praised from the bottom of his heart. Then, he smiled and looked at Yun Shishir with an inquisitive look. "Which family are you from? TSK, why haven't I seen it before?" "Oh, this girl," Li Lan smiled. Although she was in a difficult position, she still smiled and introduced, "This is an artist signed by Chairman Mu himself. She's a very talented newcomer. But I haven't officially debuted yet. Once I officially debut, I'll have to ask for your help, so Qian." Chapter 351. She had deliberately emphasized the words, Chairman Mu, and personally. The meaning behind her words was already unclear. However, Qian Xiaohua was also very stubborn. Once he set his eyes on a woman, his determination would not be shaken even by thunder. Hey, don't mention it. Of course, I can't not support Master Mu. He smiled and said a few more polite words. Then he looked at Yun Shishir meaningfully. The latter was obviously not used to his almost bone-piercing gaze, so she avoided Li Lan's gaze even more. She really didn't like this man looking at her as if he wanted to devour her completely. Noticing that she was avoiding his gaze, Li Lan's smile remained unchanged. However, she was slightly nervous. She couldn't help but secretly criticize the man in front of her. It was really difficult to deal with this man in front of her. Although she was Mu Yaja's assistant, Qian Xiaohua's prominent status was there, so she couldn't appear too strong. After all, she was just a small assistant. She had to be very careful with her words in front of a big shot. However, if she was to be more tactful, this old man was really cunning. He deliberately misunderstood her meaning and wanted to avoid her. He was determined to get Yun Shishir. However, if she insisted on Mu Yaja's face and rejected him, she was afraid that it would hurt the harmony between them. It didn't matter. The key was that Chairman Mu was now cooperating with him, and this cooperation was not a small matter. They had invested in a blockbuster film. Now that everything had been finalized, they only lacked one thing. If something like this happened halfway, she would have to bear the consequences. Moreover, she really couldn't understand Mu Yaja's thoughts. It was difficult for her to guess at the moment whether this Yun Shishir was important to Chairman Mu or not. If she called and asked in front of him, she wouldn't give him a way out. If Chairman Mu didn't respond, he would blame her for not doing things properly. She wouldn't be pleasing either side. It was a dilemma. Now, Li Lan, who had been through a lot, was also trapped in the current situation. It was extremely difficult for her. In all honesty, she wanted to protect her. After all, he had fallen into the hands of this old fox. After being toyed with like this, he was afraid that he would not have a good ending. Regardless of anything else, for this little girl, half of her life would be ruined. She could tell that this girl had a strong sense of self-esteem. It was already difficult for her to stay by Chairman Mu's side. Not to mention this fat old man. Just by looking at her evasive expression, he could roughly guess her reaction. She definitely wouldn't agree no matter what. But how should she deal with this man? Young Master Mu, you have good taste. Speaking of which, this little girl, Qian Xiaohua said with a smile as he approached Yun Shishir. She was shocked and quickly retracted her hand. Her body dodged to the side as she stared at him with extreme vigilance. She looked like a frightened kitten as all the hair on her body stood on end. Her brows were filled with a thick hostility. Although she didn't know what this man had in mind for her, she sharply discovered a terrifying ambition in his eyes. This ambition was exactly the same as He Lingxiang's when he looked at her. She didn't want this man to touch her at all. Even if it was just a strand of hair, she didn't want him to touch her. Chairman Qian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 352. Why are you so afraid of me? It's not like I'm going to eat you up. Li Lan was anxious, but she maintained a respectful smile on her face. She smiled and said, Hey Qian. Mr. Qian, this girl is still so young. Of course she doesn't know anything. I'm afraid that she won't be able to serve you well. Why don't I pick a few girls from the company who know how to do things and send them to you? What do you think? This woman wasn't a simple character. She was too slick in doing things. However, these words made Yun Shishir's hair stand on end. She had only heard that Huanyu Entertainment was one of the top entertainment companies in the country. Most of the artists who came from Huanyu were outstanding stars in the film or music industry. However, according to Li Lan's words, Huanyu was actually referring to them as serving people? Was there no place in the entertainment industry that was clean? Qian was a little unhappy. He shook his head and looked at her mockingly. Miss Li, are you trying to brush me off? It's not that I want to say this, but even if you search the entire Huanyu, you won't be able to find another person like her. Don't talk about those mediocre women in your company. Hearing the impatience and disgust in his tone, Li Lan's face remained calm, but she was a little flustered inside. Could it be that she had to watch Qian Xiaohua openly take Yun Shirshir away in front of her? If she stopped him forcefully, she was afraid that she would be neglecting him. To be honest, this man was definitely not someone she could afford to offend. With such a tough attitude, even if she brought up the Xiao, this man would still be fearless. It was no wonder that he didn't care. Everyone in the entertainment industry knew that Master Mu would never treat the artistes in his company seriously. Women were dispensable. Hence, Qian Xiaohuan naturally didn't mind. He was probably thinking that it was just a woman. Would Master Mu be so calculative with him? However, she hadn't been by the CEO's side for so many years for nothing. She could more or less tell that this girl was special in the CEO's heart. It was special. Li Lan sighed inwardly and held Yun Shirshir's hand tightly. Qian Xiaohua waved at Yun Shirshir and motioned for her to come over. However, Yun Shirshir remained silent and expressionless as she leaned against Qian Xiaohua's side. Qian Xiaohua was a little anxious. "Aya, you lass. How could he be so immature? How did Miss Li teach you?" Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and opened her mouth. She wanted to scold him fiercely, but no sound came out. However, Li Lan squeezed her hand tightly. Li Lan seemed to be telling her not to speak, so she bit her lip again. Li Lan hurriedly said, "Mr. Qian, you have to do it for Mr. Mu's sake, right? After all, this girl belongs to him, and no one can touch her." President Qian. Chapter 353. Since Mu Yaja was not around, he could do whatever he wanted. Who did not know how to do one thing in front of others and another behind their backs? When Li Lan relayed his words back to Mu Yaja, there was no testimony, so he could just deny it. Who would believe a mere assistant? When the time came, Li Lan would be in deep trouble. She had to admit that this sly old fox had a shrewd plan. Li Lan was stunned. Although her expression did not change, she secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. This Qian Xiaohua was really gutsy. However, when she saw him reaching out to take Yun Shirshir away by force, she instinctively stood in front of her protectively. Just as her mind went blank from nervousness, an extremely gloomy sneer was heard from the end of the corridor. "Tell me, whose face do I have to give in to?" This casual sentence was laced with a gloomy coldness. It was like a sharp sword sealed in ice, piercing one's heart to the point of numbness. Qian Xiaohua was stunned, and his hands froze. How could he not recognize this voice? However, this voice was so cold that even the expression on his face froze. After a moment of shock, he abruptly turned around and saw a stalwart figure slowly walking toward him. The man had a head of black hair and was dressed in a well-ironed handmade suit. He was arrogant, domineering, and confident. His cold face was arrogant and domineering, and his aura was domineering. He was as handsome as a god. The man strolled over from afar. His steps were steady and calm, just like a lion walking in its own territory. Behind him was a gorgeously dressed woman with heavy makeup on her face and wavy flaxen hair, which was the most popular nowadays. She was very Western-looking. However, Qian Xiaohua still recognized her at a glance. This woman was Huanyu Entertainment's newly signed newcomer, Lu Jingtian. At that moment, his scalp tightened. His eyelids fluttered violently, and his heart pounded like thunder. His old face instantly turned pale from shock. What is he doing here? Could it be that he had heard everything that she had just said? The***. He was done for. Mu Yaja stopped in his tracks and looked up at Yun Shirshir, who was hiding behind Li Lan. Seeing that the girl was hiding behind Li Lan, only revealing a corner of her clothes and her small head, the corners of his lips naturally curved into a faint smile. This girl's way of protecting herself really made one feel a little helpless. Did she think that everything would be fine just by hiding like this? He looked at her and said in a deep voice, "Come here." His gaze was fixated on her body. Without a doubt, the bystanders naturally knew who he was calling. His voice was not loud, but it was powerful, and there was a hint of doting in his tone. Even Lu Jingtian, who was beside him, was a little puzzled. It was as if she had never seen this man so easily reveal such a tender side of him. She frowned slightly and her heart was filled with mixed feelings. She followed his line of sight and looked at Yun Shirshir with hostility in her eyes. She also recognized that this girl was none other than Yun Shirshir, who had stolen the limelight at the banquet that day. Why is it her again? Why is she here? This woman is really haunting me. Chapter 354. Lu Jingtian's heart ached as she pursed her lips tightly. Her face was filled with undisguised displeasure. She saw the girl's pale, bloodless face behind Li Lan. Her eyes were guarded, as if she had been frightened or aggrieved. She stubbornly pursed her lips and stared at the man with furrowed brows, but she did not take a step forward. This girl was really stubborn. There was no doubt that she was a beauty in the making. Li Lan, on the other hand, was secretly surprised. Even she did not expect the boss to suddenly appear here. In her moment of shock, she saw the boss asking Yun Shirshir to go over, but the last did not move. She seemed to be angry, so she reached out and pulled the girl out from behind her, pushing her in the direction of her boss. Silly girl, why aren't you going over? Yun Shirshir lost her footing from the push and fell toward Mu Yaja, straight into his muscular chest. She awkwardly got up and retreated, wanting to keep a distance from him, but the man's strong arm wrapped around her waist domineeringly. She was forced to snuggle against his chest, and all she could hear was his strong heartbeat. That heartbeat was like a tranquilizer, and it quickly brushed away the uneasiness in her heart. Thus, she did not resist and obediently stayed put. The man lowered his head and looked at her little head buried in his chest. His thin lips curled up. He was obviously very satisfied with her submission, but he was still a little dissatisfied inside. In her mind, it had only been a few days since he had last looked for her. It had only been a few days. He did not expect this last to be so restless and quickly attract bees and butterflies for him. She had attracted the attention of others. This more or less made him feel unhappy in his heart. Just like his boldness and means in the business world, this man's possessiveness was unreasonably strong when it came to relationships. Although he did not care much for other women and could summon them at his beck and call, this girl had an invisible and unique place in his heart. Although he did not admit it, nor did he realize it, it was undeniable that he found other men touching, peeking at her, and drooling over her to be an eyesore. I'll settle the score with her later. Lifting his chin slightly, Mu Yaja swept his gaze across the room and stared at Qian Xiaohua like a ferocious tiger. The latter's heart trembled when he was stared at by that sharp gaze. His scalp immediately went numb, as if he was being stared at by some ferocious beast. Qian Xiaohua turned pale with fright. His domineering aura was quickly defeated. He lowered his head in disappointment and called out weakly, "Chairman Mu." This made it seem like he was extremely guilty. In the past, Qian Xiaohua's status was enough to address Mu Yaja as Young Master Mu. However, he was so nervous that he subconsciously changed the way he addressed him and addressed him as Chairman Mu. Lu Jinghan smiled and casually said, "Oh, you're right. Boss Qian, long time no see. It's rare to see you today, and I heard your loud voice as soon as I arrived. No wonder young Master Mu is unhappy. What you said just now was too arrogant." Chapter 355. Qian Xiaohua's forehead was sweating profusely and his voice trembled slightly. "I didn't mean it, I didn't mean it." Mu Yaja's lips curled up slightly, but it was an extremely cold smile. His gaze deepened and the coldness in his eyes became even more gloomy. "Chief Qian is very interested in my woman?" After saying that, his arm forcefully wrapped around Yun Shirshir's shoulders and pulled her towards himself. This action seemed to be a silent declaration. This woman was his. The man who was still holding his head high immediately lowered his head humbly like a tortoise grandson. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead and he was extremely flustered. Qian Xiaohua was in a dilemma. It wasn't appropriate to admit it, but it wasn't right to not admit it either. He was afraid that this man had heard everything that he had said just now. Otherwise, why would he be glaring at him like a tiger eyeing its prey? He had only said those words to show off when Mu Yaja wasn't around. Who would have thought that he would coincidentally bump into him and even hear every single word? He didn't dare to raise his head to look at the man's gloomy expression. Just hearing that cold voice was enough to scare him out of his wits. To be honest, he had only seen Mu Yaja once. Most of the time, It was when they were talking about cooperation at the wine table. In his eyes, Mu Yaja was the noble and arrogant crown prince of an aristocratic family. Although he was young, perhaps it was because he came from an aristocratic background, he had been pampered and cultivated an arrogant personality. It was to the extent that he always looked down on everyone and never put anyone in his eyes. However, when it came to his background, it was extremely mysterious. At least, the people in their circle didn't know anything about it. After being together for so many years, they only knew a little. He only knew that on the surface, this young Master Mu was the famous entertainment tycoon in the capital and he was in charge of 2 entertainment companies with strong qualifications. However, in actual fact, he was an important figure in an aristocratic family. The power behind him was something that they couldn't afford to offend. With just a yawn, the entire financial street would be shaken. This wasn't a groundless rumor. Just based on the fact that the mayor had to condescend to meet him, it could be seen that this kid's background was extraordinary. Because of this, everyone respected this young Xiao and bowed down to him. Rather than saying that they were in awe of him, it was more accurate to say that they were afraid of the mysterious power behind him. And this man, in actual fact, he was also a master with ruthless methods. There was a saying in the circle, if you can't become young Master Mu's partner, then you can't become his enemy. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire. Qian Xiaohua naturally didn't want to infuriate him over such a small matter, hence he put on a serious expression. Chairman Mu, you see, it's just a woman. It's fine if you don't want to give her up. This matters. Why should we hurt each other's relationship? Hearing that, Mu Yaja glanced at him from the corner of his eyes. His eyes were languid and his angular face was filled with coldness as he said in a deep voice, "The words you said earlier, I don't like to hear it." His voice was slow and deep, with deep meaning behind it. Anyone who heard it would be able to sense his dissatisfaction. His heart skipped a beat as Qian Xiaohua gave a dry laugh and lowered his head to apologize. Chapter 356. Sigh. Those are all harmless jokes. Harmless? Mu Yaja coldly raised his eyes. His deep, almond-shaped eyes shone with a sharp glint. This. Qian Xiaohua stammered, not knowing what to say. Mu Yaja sneered and said indifferently in a low voice, "Mr. Qian, how can I feel at ease working with you when you're like this?" Qian Xiaohua was stunned, clearly not expecting him to say that. He immediately looked up with an ugly expression and saw Mu Yaja's handsome face full of indifference. "Master Mu, what do you mean? Could it be that he was going to give up on their collaboration? What kind of international joke is this?" This investment was highly valued by Qian Xiaohua. This blockbuster would bring about considerable profits for both parties. Once he invested in it, he would be able to get rich returns. In the entire capital, only Mu Yaja had such influence and boldness. But he actually wanted to kick out their cooperation just because of a woman like this? He had already drawn up the investment for this blockbuster, and he only needed one final push before it could be put into operation. Alas, he was not the only one surprised. Even Lu Jingtan, who was beside him, was shocked. She had never seen him fall out with a business partner over a woman. Even Li Lan, who was used to seeing Mu Yaja do as he pleased, was a little surprised. Her gaze involuntarily shifted to Yun Shishir, who was in his arms. It seemed that Yun Shishir was indeed special to the boss. It seemed that she had done the right thing by defending her earlier. You should know what I mean. He was never one to repeat himself twice. He was disgusted by the way this man stared at his woman. It was extremely annoying. Even without Qian Xiaohua in this blockbuster, there would still be many investors lining up to be selected by him. He would not be the only one left. Only then did Qian Xiaohua panic. "Mr. Mu, can't we talk things over? Why do you have to force me into a dead end for this little lass?" Mu Yaja glanced at him expressionlessly and sneered. He could not be bothered with him anymore. Thus, without another look at him, he proudly strode off with Yun Shishir in his arms. This man did not intend to give him any face. That resolute back view was simply too domineering. Lu Jingtian stared at Mu Yaja's back as he left. She wanted to follow him, but if she did, it would make her seem unreserved. She couldn't help but feel a little stuffy in her heart, and her hands couldn't help but clench into fists. Something seemed to flash through her eyes, and her brows slowly furrowed. Qian Shaohua's stiff smile only disappeared when the man was a distance away. Furrowing his brows, he glared at Li Lan and Lu Jingtian in shame and indignation. He gritted his teeth and scolded, "What a load of its asterisk T. Damn it. With just one sentence, he kicked me out of the partnership. Is that woman more important than this investment?" Li Lan smiled faintly. "Mr. Qian, I told you earlier that this girl's identity is not ordinary, but you didn't believe me. Isn't this what happened?" Qian Shaohua was also a hot-blooded man. He was already in a fit of anger, and now that someone was adding insult to injury, he was even more furious. Chapter 357. Assistant Li? Are you gloating now that my business deal is ruined? She smiled reservedly. How would I dare to laugh at you? Although she said that she was inwardly overjoyed. That smile was an eyesore to Qian Shaohua. Now, even a small assistant was laughing at him? He angrily cursed in the direction of Mu Yaja's departure. D****, why are you so arrogant? Do you think I want to work with you? Who do you think you are? Lu Jingtian returned to her senses when she heard this. Turning her head to look at him coldly, she coolly said, "Mr. Qian, as a person in this industry, it's best to leave a way out for yourself when you speak. You must know clearly what you should and shouldn't say. Do you think you can gossip about Master Mu?" Qian Shaohua glanced at her and was about to rebuke her, but on second thought, this woman's background was not simple. Although she was not a mysterious big shot like Mu Yaja, her background was not to be trifled with. The reason why she had so many resources waiting in line before her debut was that she had someone backing her. Her father was one of Huan Yu's top executives. Just this identity alone was enough for her to do whatever she wanted. The Lu family was born into a rich family, and her mother was also someone important. After thinking about it, he chose to swallow his anger. It's just a woman, is there a need to be so eager? How despicable! Qian Shaohua could not help but curse. She's just a woman. Is there a need for that chap to treat me like this? I've been looking forward to this investment case for a long time. Mr. Qian, I advise you to be more polite with your words. This time, it's just a failed collaboration. If your words fall on Master Mu's ears next time, do you still have a way out in the capital? Qian Shaohua suffered a setback. His face turned green and red, but he could not bring himself to do it. He snorted angrily, turned around and walked away. Li Lan and Lu Jingtian looked at each other and then smiled at each other as a greeting. No matter how high her background was, she still treated Li Lan, who was by Mu Yaja's side, with respect. She smiled and asked, "Big Sister Li, who is that girl?" Li Lan was about to answer, but after thinking for a while, she paused and said with a smile, "She's just a small artist in the company. It's not worth worrying about." Her answer was very vague and ambiguous. It was no wonder that she was so wary of Han Jingyi. After all, Lu Jingtian was known for her ruthlessness in the industry. She often relied on the power behind her to ostracize newcomers. There were even rumors that she had slapped a newbie in front of everyone because she had badmouthed her behind her back. The newcomer's face was so swollen that he had to wear a mask on stage. After that incident, due to the power behind her, he had no choice but to settle the matter. From then on, he would respectfully address her as Sister Lu whenever he saw her. His predecessor had signed a contract with Haina Corporation, but for some unknown reason, he resolutely transferred to Huanyu Entertainment at the risk of breaching the contract and paying huge compensation. At first, Li Lan didn't quite understand her intentions, but after all, Li Lan's mind was clear, and now she had guessed 70 to 80% of her intentions. This was probably an ulterior motive. She did not want Yun Shishir to inadvertently offend her before she had a firm foothold in the industry. Chapter 358. Lu Jingtian smiled. Even though her answer was perfunctory, she did not pursue the matter. She merely smiled faintly and said, "I was supposed to have a private date with Master Mu tonight, but someone interrupted it. Am very unhappy." She paused for a moment before continuing in a slow and drawn-out tone. Since this girl is under your care, then, Cicely, I hope that such a thing won't happen again. Don't do it again. You know what to do, don't you? Li Lan slowly nodded. The smile at the corner of her lips was somewhat forced as her heart turned cold. Her words were considered a deterrent. Late at night, the evening breeze was slightly chilly. Along the way, Yun Shirshir's face was pale, while the man's expression was even gloomier. She was practically half carried and half hugged by him the whole way. Her whole body was in his embrace, and it was as if she was about to become part of his flesh and blood. She raised her head, only to see the man's unusually cold expression. He seemed to be angry. She did not know why he was angry, though. She, on the other hand, felt a chill in her heart when she heard the conversation between Li Lan and Qian Xiaohua. Mu Yaja carried Yun Shirshir to the back seat and closed the door. The chauffeur started the car, and the streamlined sports car sped out of the clubhouse's entrance. She hurriedly broke free from him the moment she sat down. Her expression was somewhat unnatural as she leaned to the side. She glanced at him, only to see him leaning leisurely against the seat. His straight eyebrows were slightly lowered, and there was a hint of the calm before the storm between his brows. Yun Shirshir's face involuntarily tensed up. Her hands unconsciously clenched the leather cushion beneath her as her heart seemed to be weighed down by a heavy stone. Mu Yaja looked at her coldly. His lips suddenly curled into a half-smile. "Come here." Yun Shirshir pursed her lips but did not move for a long time. She did not want to be so close to him. Moreover, he was now exuding such a sharp aura. It was as if she would be stabbed by the sharp, cold aura around him if she were to get any closer. The man, however, was dissatisfied with her stubborn behavior. "I never repeat my words twice." His eyes narrowed dangerously and his voice was as cold as ice. His slightly raised eyebrows were like the sharp edge of a sword. She was stunned, but in the end she still moved a few inches closer to him. She saw the man suddenly wrap his arm around her and easily pull her towards him. His large palm pinched her chin, and the smile in his deep and mesmerizing eyes deepened. He said casually, "When I'm not around, you still know how to seduce people?" He lowered his head and looked at her face. It was really alluring. Between her frowning eyebrows and narrowed eyes, there was a flirtatious flow. It was really grinding one's mind. Even though it had only been 2 days since he last saw her, he missed her dearly. Especially when he held her in his arms, the desire hidden deep in his heart was immediately triggered. All the hormones in his body were stimulated, and he couldn't wait to take her in the car. However, in this aspect, he was extremely stingy. He was stingy in displaying her beauty in front of others, stingy in showing her bewitchment to anyone other than him. Hence, when he thought of how that old man had looked at her with an unfathomable gaze, and how he had wanted to touch her with his dirty hands, just thinking about it made him feel extremely dazzled. If he hadn't coincidentally had a meal at the same private club, would this little thing have been snatched away by someone else? Chapter 359. In the past, he also knew what kind of person Qian Xiaohua was. His only hobby was to play with women. Sometimes, when he worked with him, he would also send a few female artistes under Huanyu to accompany him. But after a few times, did he silently think that as long as it was a woman from Huanyu, he could casually touch her? Mu Yaja's gaze was extremely dangerous. Yun Shirshir was stunned for a moment, then immediately realized what he meant. Her face suddenly turned pale, and she shook her head hard. Saying that she seduced him? I didn't. She denied it heavily. How was she seducing him? What kind of crime was he accusing her of for no reason? Mu Yaja naturally knew that she didn't, but he just loved to tease her like this. He just loved to see her angry gaze. She was just like an angry kitten, ready to bare her fangs and brandish her claws at him if he provoked her slightly. It seemed like this was really a bad hobby. He understood it deep down, but he just loved to tease her like this. He just loved to see how cute she looked when she was mad. He smiled slightly, and his muscular arms simply carried her to sit on his body. Then what did I see just now? If I wasn't here, would you have left with him? I wouldn't. How could she have left with him? You're lying. His large palm clasped the back of her neck, and the man's lips curled into a devilish smile. He leaned close to her ear and whispered, "If I hadn't arrived in time just now, would you have left with him?" Yun Shirshir bit her lip. Just as she was about to speak, she lowered her eyebrows. It was only then that she realized how ambiguous and intimate their current position of hugging each other was. The two bodies were tightly pressed together, and there was no gap between them. In an instant, her face and ears were dyed red. Even her fair and delicate skin was slightly flushed. She couldn't help but move back, but he hugged her back to his chest again. "Say it." "I wouldn't." "Why not?" he asked again. Yun Shirshir said angrily, "You wouldn't. You wouldn't. You seem to dislike me? Why?" His voice was very gentle, low, and extremely magnetic. It was full of bewitchment. "Which part of me doesn't satisfy you?" The man's warm breath instantly heated up her small and cute earlobes. Yun Shirshir pursed her lips and turned her face away, but he pinched her face. Mu Yaja's eyes gradually darkened. He lowered his head, and the tip of his tongue gently touched her lips were as sweet as always. Yun Shirshir gritted her teeth, but she really couldn't answer. The palm on the back of her neck suddenly pressed down, and she was caught off guard as she leaned in close to his face. Looking at the handsome face was so close, Yun Shirshir, Yun's face. Suddenly lowering his head, the man's slightly cold lips covered her small mouth and pressed against hers. He coldly asked, "Do you like that old man?" She wanted to shake her head fiercely, but her neck was held tightly by him, so she could not move at all. However, her mouth was blocked by him, and she didn't dare to move for a moment. Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes, admiring the helplessness in her eyes. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Or do you like me?" Yun Shirshir was stunned, and she instinctively wanted to deny it. How could she like this heartless and cold man in front of her? Chapter 360. Seeing her silent reaction, the man smiled devilishly and said in an unquestionable tone, "Answer me." Yun Shirshir stubbornly refused to say a word, but she suddenly sensed his hand wantonly reaching into her clothes. Her heart skipped a beat and she subconsciously glanced back from the corner of her eye. However, she saw the chauffeur continue driving as if he didn't see or hear anything. He didn't even glance at the rearview mirror. Every time the man made a move, she would glance at the chauffeur again with lingering fear. Sensing her worried gaze, the chauffeur pressed a button and the partition slowly rose, completely separating the front seat and the back seat. Even so, she still panicked. "Don't." She reached out and grabbed his wrist, saying softly, "Not here." From her words, it was clear that she was already giving in. However, Mu Yaja wasn't satisfied with this answer. He held her hand back and continued his actions with her fingertips. Yun Shirshir was embarrassed and annoyed. She struggled, but the strength in his hand was ridiculously overbearing. Thus, she took the initiative to hug his neck with her right hand and lightly pecked his lips. She was taking the initiative to please him again. "Answer me." However, the man was like a devil. He didn't give up and whispered softly in her ear, "Otherwise, I'll do you in the car." Yun Shirshir was stunned. She saw a playful smile in the man's eyes. There was no doubt that he would really do that. Yun Shirshir bit her lip and said softly, I like you." There seemed to be some emotions in her eyes that were struggling and intertwining. However, these words were a little against her will. However, the man was in the mood to tease her. He naughtily bit her collarbone and unscrupulously admired her face that was flushed red due to excessive nervousness. He asked softly, "What do you like about me?" Yun Shirshir looked up in shock and stared into the depths of his deep eyes. "Tell me, what do you like about me?" The man chuckled and pulled her hand downward. As if her fingertips had been scalded, she quickly retracted her hand and said word by word, "No. Don't be like this." She looked at his handsome face, and his eyes were fixed on her face. However, she felt that she was so unbearable and cheap right now. Vaguely, Qian Xiaohua's aggressive and insulting words rang in her ears again. She suddenly suspected that in this man's heart, she was also a woman with such an existence. One that was as cheap as a commodity. Once it was labeled, it could be casually traded by anyone. She didn't know why, but she was a little concerned about his thoughts. He saw that she had a lot on her mind and her expression was extremely solemn. However, she was also a little sad and a little dazed. Mu Yaja immediately retracted his smile. He thought of Qian Xiaohua and wondered what he had said to her that caused this woman to look at him with a gaze that was more or less bone-chilling. He pinched her chin and used a little strength with his fingertips. He was afraid that he would hurt her, so his movements were deliberately gentler. He asked in a deep voice, "What did he say to you?" Those words were simply too embarrassing. She couldn't say it out loud. Seeing that his expression was getting worse, she slowly said, "He just wants me to accompany him for a night." Chapter 361. As soon as she said that, Mu Yaja's gaze immediately turned gloomy. In the restaurant, he had just walked out of the private room when he heard Li Lan's voice. Amidst his astonishment, he also heard Qian Xiaohua's voice. However, as they were too far away, he couldn't hear their conversation clearly. He could only vaguely hear that Qian Xiaohua wanted to take this little woman away. After observing for a while, he stepped forward. However, he didn't know that Qian Xiaohua was actually using the cheapest currency to measure his woman. Yun Shishir said in a low voice, "Am I like that in your heart too? A woman who can be sold for a price?" Seeing that his expression was dark and cold and didn't say anything, she anxiously said, "I'm not a commodity, so don't sell me to others." What responded to her was his ferocious kiss. Without waiting for her to finish her sentence, he fiercely sealed her mouth and kissed every last bit of her broken words. The tip of his tongue recklessly invaded her little mouth and wildly swept across her mouth. His thin lips tightly pressed against her little mouth. He didn't seem to want to give her a chance to breathe. He bit the tip of her tongue and violently plundered her along with her breath. She even thought that she was going to suffocate and faint in his arms in the next moment. Just as her consciousness was about to go blank, he finally let go of her. Yun Shishir was extremely tired as she laid on his shoulder. Her red lips greedily took in large mouthfuls of air. As she gradually regained her consciousness, she seemed to hear his deep voice. "You're my woman. Who dares to touch you?" His words revealed a bit of arrogance, but also unintentionally revealed a bit of undetectable gentleness. However, she was sensitive enough to feel his gentleness, but this gentleness pierced her heart to the point of pain. She also didn't know why her heart was hurting so badly. It twitched, and she felt a little uncomfortable. The tip of her nose was also sour. This man's domineering protection made her feel an inexplicable sense of security. In her heart, she actually tasted a little bit of sweetness. This man was indeed domineering, but this feeling of being protected in his arms was very good. Asterisk in the VIP room. In front of the billiard table, a devilishly handsome man gracefully crouched beside the table. The cue in his hand was aimed at the billiard ball. A pair of long, narrow, and soul-stirring eyes flickered with a devilish light. Dong! With a crisp sound of impact, the black 8 ball neatly shot into the hole. Whether it was the angle or the strength, it was impeccable. Gu Jinglian stood up casually, his slender hand gently stroking the cue stick, his lips curling into a playful smile. "Director Yang, why are you just sitting there? You're not moving at all. You should play to your heart's content, shouldn't you?" As he spoke, he smiled and turned around. "Look, I won again. You have no chance again, hee." Everyone looked at his strange and unpredictable smile, disdain and contempt on his cold and elegant face, and they all swallowed with difficulty. Gu Jinglian was smiling, but everyone present felt a chill run down their spines. They were frightened by this man's temperamental mood swings and his mood swings. At the side, in a corner, Yang Shouqing sat on the sofa with a stiff expression. His whole body sank into the sofa, his face pale and his shoulders trembling uncontrollably. Chapter 362. At his feet, there was a corpse lying quietly. Its eyes were terrifyingly wide open. 3 minutes ago, the corpse was still alive. It was one of Yang Shouqing's bodyguards. Now, there was a bleeding hole between his eyebrows. He had offended young Master Gu with one sentence and ended up like this. It was too horrible to look at. Fresh blood flowed onto the floor, filling the room with the thick smell of blood. The temperature of his skin was gradually cooling. The terrifying atmosphere of death enveloped the large room. Qin Zhou looked at Yang Shouqing's ashen face with sympathy and walked to the table to arrange the balls. Ji Lin was playing with a few billiard balls on the side, but he looked as if he was used to this scene. Gu Jinglian slowly sat down on the sofa and lit a cigarette. His slender hand brushed the slightly messy hair on his forehead as he said slowly, "Mr. Yang, why aren't you saying anything? Could it be that Jinglian didn't treat you well enough and you didn't have enough fun?" His body sank into the sofa. Beside him, two sexy girls dressed in sexy and revealing clothes immediately came up to him. Their graceful and exquisite bodies slowly straddled his body, carefully holding his handsome face, and planted a kiss on his lips. Gu Jinglian smiled flirtatiously. His large palm suddenly reached under the woman's skirt and moved up, teasing her body. Yang Shouqing was inexplicably shocked. "No. Young Master Gu, you're being too serious? How's the injury on your hand recovering, Mr. Yang?" Gu Jinglian didn't look at him. He was focused on playing with the woman who kept touching him coquettishly. His tone was chilling. "It's fine now. If Xingze offended you in any way, tell me. I'll apologize to you on his behalf." Yang Shouqing's face stiffened. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Apologize? Asking the head of the Gu family, the most powerful family in the underworld, to apologize to him wasn't just an apology. It was asking for his life. Yang Shouqing was filled with regret at this moment. He didn't expect Gu Xingze's brother to be Gu Jinglian of the underworld Gu family. This was incredible. He had offended someone he shouldn't have offended. Previously, he did not know who Gu Xingze was. He only knew that this young man was very arrogant and dared to challenge him. Who was Yang Shouqing? The godfather of Hong Kong cinema, a legend of his generation. He was the man who dominated the Hong Kong film industry for 20 years. He had been in the entertainment industry for so many years. With his strong background and methods, no one had dared to give him any face. Gu Xingze was the first and only one. After the cocktail party, Qin Zhou had also brought a few of the people in charge of Huanyu to personally apologize. However, Yang Shouqing was proud and arrogant. How could he be appeased so easily? The reason he asked Qin Zhou for Gu Xingze was because he wanted to get Gu Xingze to come over and teach him a lesson. He wanted him to know that the entertainment industry was huge and that he, Yang Shouqing, was a man of his word. Don't think that you can look down on others just because you've been in the industry for 10 years and have been hailed as a heavenly king idol. Even the higher-ups of Huanyu had to give him face. Gu Xingze did not know the immensity of heaven and earth and dared to go against him. However, he didn't expect that Gu Xingze wasn't a simple character. The Gu family of the underworld was the only wealthy family in Beijing that had been passed down for hundreds of years.